On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 10.
Good morning, I'm Emily Rose Adams. In the last half an hour, the average price of a full tank of petrol for a family car in the UK has hit £100 for the first time. Prices have been rising throughout the week, and the Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove has told Talk TV the impact of the cost of living crisis is painful for families, but said it was down to a number of external pressures.
I don't for a moment deny the fact that with fuel prices increasing, with food prices increasing as well, it is tough out there. This is the consequence of inflationary pressures. The war in Ukraine is a principal factor. It's also the case that some of the strains caused as a result of the COVID pandemic are a factor.
A government review has found the age at which people can legally buy tobacco products in England should rise every year. It's part of government plans to be smoke-free and eradicating smoking by 2030, which would mean less than 5% of the population being smokers. The review was commissioned by the Health Secretary Sajid Javid last year, but ministers are reportedly split on the plans. Boris Johnson will extend the right to buy to people who rent from housing associations as part of a bid to boost home ownership in Britain and move on from questions over his leadership. He'll also say that lower paid workers will be able to use their housing benefits to obtain mortgages. But the Shadow Housing Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has doubts over whether the plan will work.
If you're on universal credit, you're not allowed to have more than 16,000 in savings, and the reality is most people don't have any at all. Mortgage lenders will be saying to people, well, where's your deposit? I think the reality is that this will help absolutely nobody at all.
The energy watchdog Ofgem has found thousands of customers who lost power during Storm Arwen were provided with an unacceptable service. Nearly 1 million homes were cut off after winds of up to 98 miles per hour battered parts of the UK last November. And around 4,000 were still affected for over a week after and were not reconnected until December the 8th. A search is continuing for 2 people who went missing after their boat capsized on a lake in Devon. Emergency services rescued 2 people safely from the water at Rodeford Lake yesterday afternoon, and another 2 were taken to hospital in Plymouth. Police confirmed all those involved were local adults, and next of kin of those missing had been informed. And new research suggests the number of jobs offering a 4-day week has increased over the past year. Job site CV Library said adverts for 4-day week positions have jumped by around 90%, especially for work in sectors such as charities, sales, distribution and catering. The report comes days after scores of companies in the UK launched a trial of a 4-day week for their staff lasting 6 months. And now it's time for today's weather.
Times Business sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello, I'm Nazanin Gaffer. Wet and windy weather from the west over the next few days. We are seeing the remnants of Tropical Storm Alex heading towards northern parts of the UK through Friday and Saturday. It's going to bring very windy conditions there. And interestingly, over the next few days, we are also going to see high or very high pollen levels due to the fact that it's going to turn increasingly windy, but also temperatures are going to be rising, especially across southern areas. And we've seen quite a lot of rain recently. As a result, that means there's a lot of grass about, and lots of grass pollen levels are going to be high too, mainly across England and Wales. So for today, we are starting off mostly fine and dry, but out towards the southwest, it's already cloudy with some patchy outbreaks of rain. Cloudy across parts of the north as well, brighter further south. That band of rain will be moving its way eastwards through today, mainly reaching central and western parts of the UK, where it will be mostly cloudy with some patchy outbreaks of rain. But across eastern Scotland and eastern parts of England, it looks mostly fine and bright. Then for Friday and for Saturday, as I mentioned, we are going to see the remnants of Tropical Storm Alex approaching northern parts of the UK. It's going to bring very windy conditions across these areas, choppy waters, gales likely around parts of the coast, but calmer across parts of the south, mainly dry and bright.
Sunday Times Culture sponsors Talk TV weather.
Danny in Ipswich, you're on the air. Danny, good morning.
I'm sitting here with my little Chihuahua dog on the sofa.
What a ridiculous thing to say. You do talk nonsense. Get to the point. So you don't like Boris Johnson, right?
No, I do not.
Bye.
Good morning and welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham, right here on Talk TV, the one place where you get the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Straight talking, of course, is the only thing that matters here, and an awful lot of common sense rolled into one. There's quite a lot to be getting on with today. The Labour Party have apparently decided they're going to back the rail strike unions. Lisa Nandy has said that this morning, so now officially they are on the side of bringing the country to a complete and utter standstill. Brilliant. Marvellous. Thank you very much indeed. Sir Keir Starmer, unfortunately, didn't mention it yesterday in Prime Minister's Questions. We'll have a look at that and find out why he was so absolutely and utterly useless. Meanwhile, petrol has broken through yet another barrier. The average cost now of filling the family car is over £100. I've just had a tweet from someone who's on the M6 who says they've found unleaded petrol now £2.02 per litre, which is absolutely extraordinary. Guests throughout the course of the show. We've got James Evans, who is a member of the Welsh Senate. He's going to talk about what's going on there. They're trying to make it bigger. Andrew Allison is here from the Freedom Association. We're also going to talk to Mick Jagger's brother, Chris Jagger, about a show he's got coming up. Imagine being Mick Jagger's brother. That's quite interesting. Also, the Thursday Club with Helen and Nickland. We're going to be celebrating French wine, would you believe? And it's quite a nice day for it. We're going to kick off, though, with John Rentoul, chief political commentator from The Independent. We've got lots to discuss, lots to be getting on with. We want to hear from you as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk TV. Let's do it. And here we are, once again, possibly being thrown back to the 70s. I keep trying to bring this analogy in. John Rentoul is here. Very good morning to you, John.
Good morning.
Astonishing tales to discuss. Let's kick off, first of all, shall we, with the price of petrol, because the government keeps saying they're going to do something about the cost of living, but all we've got from them... The government keeps saying they're going to do something about the cost of living, but all we've got from them...
They cut 5 pence off the
well, they did that so long ago that everybody's forgotten about it, and it didn't actually make any difference. It didn't make any
difference at all. It was...
In fact, in most places it went up.
They might as well have just left the fuel duty as it was.
Yeah.
For all the benefit it did.
Exactly right. And I mean, what they really should be doing is cutting the fuel duty altogether, shouldn't they? In terms of actually losing, because people can't afford to go
the
anywhere.
Market, Mike.
Well, you can actually, because they do it all the time. They do it all the time.
Well, they shouldn't.
Well, you say that, but it's all right for you because you cycle around in London on a bicycle. But there are a lot of people who need cars, vans, trucks, lorries, and all sorts of things to do their daily jobs, and they are finding it very, very difficult and too expensive.
Yeah, well, but the government can't help everybody with every cost of living problem, can they? I mean, they're already doing...
Well, they can't, but the point about fuel is that fuel fuels, if you don't mind me saying so, every single thing that goes up in price, because, supermarkets have to have stuff delivered. Yeah. If you're getting stuff delivered from Amazon, the prices are going up because the fuel price has gone up, so it actually does affect everything. It's not like giving people 5p off a pound of cheese.
No, absolutely. No, the government ought to be extremely worried about inflation, which, was going to be a blip, and is now sort of...
But it does appear but it also does appear as though there's no actual economic reason why fuel should be so expensive, because the price keeps going up and up and up, but actually the wholesale price is not going up.
Well, that's what puzzles me. Yeah. I don't understand. I mean,
so there's something going on.
Well, yes, I'm not an expert in the international market in fuel, gas, and oil, and all the rest of it. But I thought we'd gone over a peak and we're coming back down.
But certainly the price,
obviously not.
The price of wholesale petroleum is certainly lower than it was in 2008. Some people say that the reason it's so much higher today than it was then at the pumps is because of a difference in currencies. I don't think that's all it is.
That can't be the explanation.
No, that can't be the explanation. So there's clearly something going on where there's an awful lot of profiteering going on, and I think at that point...
Oh, I don't think so, Mike, no.
That's when... well, there is somewhere, because there's no explanation as to why... why suddenly, for example, did I get a tweet last night from someone who said, I sent you a tweet earlier in the day where I said it was 1.91 in my local petrol station. It's now gone up by 6p in the day that I've been walking around, and it's now 1.97.
Yeah,
there's no explanation for that.
Whenever prices go up, people start complaining about profiteering, but usually it's market forces, it's supply and demand.
Well, there's an interesting conundrum there, isn't there, between the words market forces and profiteering, because sometimes some market forces profiteer, don't they?
Well, indeed, which is why Rishi Sunak finally bowed to the inevitable and imposed a windfall tax on the oil and gas companies.
Well, if he's going to produce that, though, to give us some kind of, you can't just throw it into the NHS black black hole, can he? If he's going to say that
nobody's throwing it into the subsidise your energy bills black hole.
Well, yeah. So, funnily enough, I got an email from my local council just last night saying that I was eligible to claim £150 back from my council tax.
Well, they don't do it automatically.
No, you have to apply.
You have to claim it.
So, and that, of course, and as you would expect, it's quite. And I thought I'll go through the process here and see what it's like. It's quite complicated.
Right.
You have to start. You have to open an account if you don't have one, which of course you don't.
Which of course you don't.
And then that takes a while. Then
I haven't had that joy.
Then
yet.
you have to look up the council tax number, which is easy enough to find on your council tax bill. But then you have to find your property number, which is not so easy to find.
Right.
And then they point you to another...
well, you can imagine all sorts of people would find that extremely difficult.
So, like all government sort of schemes, it's not as straightforward as it at first appears. I managed to do it, but it took about half an hour. And I would consider myself to be reasonably, savvy on the internet. But before we go on, let me just tell you, we've done this before, and I want you to do it again because it's always very useful. Send in any pictures you've got and any information you've got about what prices you're seeing. So far, the highest we've seen is £2.02. I think it's Junction 16 on the M6. So tweet it to us at Talk TV. Tweet it to me at IROMG as well. Let's talk a bit about the other problem with transport, which is, of course, the rail strike. Yeah. Lisa Nandy coming out this morning and basically saying, we are behind the rail strike unions. So Keir Starmer didn't say that yesterday, did he?
Well, no. I mean, Keir Starmer tried to avoid taking sides, which is the usual.
It's a funny thing.
Which is the usual. But it is actually the usual Labour position.
As he hopped from fence to fence.
I was a bit surprised that Lisa Nandy seemed to come down.
Well, I saw a Labour MP on the news desk show last night with Tom Newton-Dunn, and when he was asked, do you back the strikers, he just said, well, what we'd like to see is the government sitting down around the table,
blah,
negotiations,
blah, yeah.
in fair dealing, blah, 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 blah. Absolutely rubbish, right? Yeah. But she's just said, we back them.
Well, what I find surprising about that is that the RMT aren't even affiliated to the Labour Party.
No.
So it's not as if they... there's any sort of mutual bond of loyalty there. The RMT is in the hands of some weird sectarian politics that's unrelated to the Labour
Absolutely.
Party.
Well, they were Brexiteers, they told me. When I had an RMT guy on, he said we voted for Brexit.
Well, but this is the extraordinary thing is that Boris Johnson said that one of the arguments for Brexit is that the wages of manual workers will be bid up.
Yeah.
This is the process of bidding up wages. This is what he expected to happen.
I mean, unusually, you might be surprised to know that I actually have some sympathy with the RMT, because at the end of the day, as much as they have a reasonably good situation on the go, they've got pretty good pensions, they've got pretty good working conditions, and they're paid pretty well. You can't really argue with a union that tries to get better conditions and better money for its members. That's what they do.
Well, it depends at whose expense.
I mean, I don't think they should be going on strike.
No, I mean generally, I'm sympathetic to organised Labour trying to get better terms and conditions for people who don't earn very much.
Yeah, and
that doesn't necessarily apply to
no,
RMT.
but I'm also sympathetic to their argument, which is quite clever actually. That it's about the people taking the money out of the railway system that they are
back to profiteering again.
I mean, profiteering.
But this is usually a nonsense argument.
Well,
Mike,
all right. Well, let me put TfL to you then. TfL have got many people working. I think there's about as many as 50 people working inside of TfL who are paid in excess of 6 figures in management, who are completely and utterly surplus to requirements. And I'd rather see that money going to people that actually work on the tube.
No, I'd agree with that. I think that's absolutely right. But it's but TfL's a public body, so there's no profiteering going on there. There's excess wages.
Waste of money going on there.
Waste of money, but that's a different thing.
Yeah, but it's still a waste of money, though, and it's still money that could be going somewhere else.
Well, the point is, all these transport industries are massively loss-making industries, especially after the pandemic.
Well, we had a guy on yesterday explaining how the train driver's system works, where if you're driving long-distance trains, you basically are allowed to work for 3 hours, then you take 3 hours off, then you work for another 3 hours, and that's the end of the day. And you do 4 of those a week. Bob's your uncle, and some of them are making 75, 80,000 a year.
This is what I call poor management. But also it's what I call unions not really standing up for the low paid and the oppressed.
No.
They're standing up for workers who are benefiting from...
who are already in a pretty good place.
Yeah, absolutely.
OK. Let's talk about Michael Gove. He was on with Julie Hartley-Brewer this morning, and basically she was asking him about this new housing policy. He's the levelling up secretary, whatever that means, right?
He'd probably only heard about it 30 minutes before.
Well, it does sound a bit like that, because she asked him basically how many people were going to be in a position to buy their home if they're technically on benefits, because the policy basically states that if you are on benefits, on housing benefit in particular, you can use that money to put it towards the purchase of your own home. It's a bit like the kind of
calling
buy
it
your own...
policy is a little bit grand, isn't it? I mean, it's a couple of lines in a press release from the government last night.
I'm not sure if Michael Gove even read that. Let's have a listen to his answer.
Well, there are more than 3 million people at the moment who claim housing benefit, and significant numbers of them are also claiming support for their rent through universal credit. But by definition...
how many of them are in a position to get a mortgage?
As a result of the changes that we are making, more. But
how many more? You said a significant number. How many? This is a major government announcement. This is about keeping Boris Johnson in power. This is about appealing to voters, changing people's lives.
Julia.
You must have a clue. It's your area of responsibility. You're the housing secretary. How many people do you think this policy will affect?
Julia, I don't know.
I don't know. We got there in the end. I mean, it is quite extraordinary, though, isn't it? That,
no, I think it's refreshingly honest for a politician to say, I don't know, because there's no reason why he should know, because this was only invented last night in Number 10 as a desperate measure. He's got to go out and defend it the next day. Of course he doesn't know. I mean, no sensible person would know, because they haven't even designed the policy
surely you would have a potential number of people who might be able to benefit from something, though.
Yes, I mean, perhaps he should have done a bit more homework on the back of an envelope before he spoke to Jagger.
I mean, I'm with you. I get the fact that it's quite refreshing to have somebody say, I don't know, but not when they've actually come on to talk about that very thing, which is a new policy that they're proposing.
that he is technically responsible for.
Exactly. I mean, I'm not sure that... but it was just very funny the way it took that long to get it out of him.
Yeah.
And maybe I don't know is the way that we should go with for future sort of exchanges, because we've got to stop in a minute, but I want to talk to you about yesterday's Prime Minister's questions, because I actually predicted before it started that Keir Starmer would miss the open goal yet again. And he somehow managed to do it.
Quite easy to predict.
I said if you'd come down from Mars yesterday and landed inside the chamber, you would have had no clue that there was ever any vote of no confidence. If it wasn't for Angela Eagle, it was never mentioned.
No,
so we'll talk about that. John Rentoul is here. We'll take your calls. Give us some info as well on what you're seeing out there at the pumps, the petrol prices, the oil prices, the diesel prices. This is Talk TV. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. I've got this from Paul. Mike, I filled my truck up at Birch Services on the M62 Manchester yesterday. Diesel, 204.9 pence per litre. Absolutely ridiculous. That's the highest yet, 204.9. Blimey, that's absolutely ridiculous. John Rental is here. I mean, this will be... I think this will become the big story of the summer, not just about the cost of living crisis, but I know that you've said, you know, government can't help everybody, but this is driving a lot of people really, really into debt.
No, but I mean, obviously, it all passes me by on my bike.
No,
but,
sure. But also, a lot of people who live in
but
London don't need a car because you can get around. The public transport systems are great. But 80% of people in the country drive to work.
Absolutely. No, I understand that. And you know, I understand the power, or the political power of the issue. I mean, it caused Tony Blair a real problem in 2000 over the fuel protests. I mean, it didn't last long, but it was a nasty scare.
Oh, it can be, and it is one of those sort of universally damaging situations because it does affect an awful lot of people. But let's talk a bit about what happened yesterday in the chamber. I mean, Keir Starmer had a great opportunity, I thought, to really make Boris Johnson look foolish and put him on the rack, and he did none of those things.
No,
and Boris emerged stronger yesterday than I think I've seen him for a while.
It was one of Keir Starmer's worst performances that I've ever seen, actually. I thought it was extraordinary. I mean, when Boris Johnson said this line of attack isn't working, it was an absolutely brilliant put down because both sides of the House knew that he was only telling the truth.
Yeah. And why did he choose to go sort of almost against his own principles? Because one of the things he rarely does is criticise the NHS. And basically what he was doing was he was trying to criticise the government, but effectively he was criticising the NHS for not being able to get an ambulance to somebody who died.
Well, absolutely. And I mean, going on the NHS is a sign of a Labour leader in trouble, because that's your sort of Labour safe defence issue. But the problem with that is that Labour doesn't have a different policy on the NHS from the government.
Also,
Labour's
the government
not proposing to spend more money.
And also, the government technically is not in charge of the ambulance service. You know, I mean, yes, the Department of Health
has to take responsibility.
Well, yes, but I mean, what I'm saying is there's an awful lot of layers between Sajid Javid and the people who did not send that ambulance.
There has to be political accountability for the state of the ambulance.
Well, I disagree.
I think I mean that's a bit like petrol. Actually.
Well, in which case you should blame the government for doctors who won't see their patients in the GP surgery. You should blame the government for the fact that there's 5 million people waiting for an operation.
Well, no, I mean, there has just been a pandemic. I mean, the government
Well, so you only blame them for some things. But you can't blame them just for not getting an ambulance to somebody and then say, but everything else is the NHS's fault.
No, I'm not saying that. But, I mean, clearly there is a problem with the pandemic. But no, the question is, why did Keir Starmer do so badly? And the only explanation can be that he wants to keep Boris Johnson in post because he thinks that Boris Johnson is wounded
I wish he were that clever. I don't think he is, sadly. But meanwhile, Lisa Nandy had a bit of a rough time, didn't she? What happened there?
Well, she was up against Michael Gove, who was introducing his new his new levelling up bill, and she was pointing out that there's nothing much in it, which is true. But in passing, she managed to she accused a Tory MP of corruption and was forced to withdraw the phrase, and got into quite a spat with the Deputy Speaker, Eleanor Lang. Tempers flared. It was quite an interesting day in Parliament, aside from the PMQs yesterday. Yeah,
it was quite busy in the afternoon with all of the levelling up scenario. Mike, petrol is nearly as dear as beer. Says somebody here, but I suppose you can try putting beer, or you can try putting wine in your car, like Prince Charles apparently does. He claims that one of his Aston Martins is fuelled on wine
ethanol.
and cheese, I think, isn't it?
Oh, I see. Yeah, no, well,
I'm not sure if that's right.
No,
I mean, that's what he says. But you know, I think the point about, I suppose, where we currently are is that Boris Johnson has survived, as I thought he would, Monday's vote. The 148 weasels, as I've been calling them, have now sort of scurried off and decided to try and fight another day.
It's an awful lot of weasels, though, Mike.
It's quite a lot of weasels, but like most weasels, many of them don't like to do anything on their own, so they're waiting to see if there's another opportunity. They've taken a shot and missed, basically. So, judging by Boris's demeanour yesterday, he doesn't look like a man who is under any pressure to do anything.
Well, he knows perfectly well that he has to look as if he's confident, and of course he did. He did the classic act. I mean, he was chatting away to Rishi Sunak,
making faces.
I mean, Rishi Sunak is his sort of protector. He's going to cling. He's going to hug him close.
Yes, and they're supposed to be making some announcements next week about tax.
Well, except that I think they may have been delayed, which is interesting because I mean, not only they're bound together. But they get on very badly.
Yes.
I mean, it's Blair and Brown all over again. I mean, it's extraordinary.
It's amazing how often that is the case, isn't it?
But Boris needs Rishi to prop him up.
Yes.
And of course he's quite good, the Prime Minister, at just standing at the dispatch box as if he knows what he's doing. You know, his hand in his pocket.
Well, he's very quick, isn't he? And he's very sort of agile. Verbally, so he can turn his hand to.
Whereas Keir Starmer was reading everything out and had his head down most of the time, wasn't even looking.
I mean, do you think Angela Regal was asked to ask that question before it started? Angela Regal, for those who weren't watching yesterday, was the person who said
she went first and asked a really tough question.
Your own party clearly doesn't trust you. Why should we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Which was a pretty good question.
Very good question.
But he was, again, quite good at answering that.
Well, he just
brushed it away.
Yeah, exactly. Didn't answer.
But rather than, that being a preamble for a further kind of concentration on that issue, Keir Starmer went the other way.
No, well, Keir Starmer obviously decided that he didn't want to go into the sort of confidence vote issue because that looks like a sort of Westminster insider.
But would he have asked Angela Regal to ask that question, do you think, or not?
Well, I think they would have consulted.
Okay.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, Angela Regal is loyal to
She's not an
leadership.
Insignificant member of Labour Party.
But, I mean, it was a bit embarrassing to have her show that she would have been a better leader of the opposition at that point than Keir Starmer. And
absolutely.
she actually nearly was, or she nearly stood for the leader of the leadership.
And what's the latest from Durham? Because, of course, presumably he and Angela Rayner have now filled out their questionnaires and have returned them by return of post to the Durham Constabulary, who will no doubt be studying these questionnaires. I mean, what is going on?
We're
waiting. Taking so bleeding long about it?
Well, the Metropolitan Police took their time over the...
but they had a bit more to investigate.
Well, they did have 126 126 events.
That I could give them a bit more leeway for.
This is one event, 2 people.
2 people for about 3 hours.
Yeah, but they'll take their sweet time before they announce that no penalty notices will be issued.
Now, final thing to mention to you, I watched last night the first part of a fascinating documentary about Margaret Thatcher, which is on BBC
Another
4.
one.
Yes, I don't know whether it's a new one or an old one, but it's got about 6 parts, and the first part was last night. And it was just so refreshing to watch her, because it was a long time ago.
Yeah.
I was much younger. I didn't vote for her, funnily enough. When I did vote in 1979, I voted for the Labour Party, believe it or not. And
as did I.
But I was only 19 and stupid. And I thought maybe the Labour Party would be good. But of course...
Sonny Jim Callaghan. Yeah. He seemed like a
worse
good
than
bet.
that, I voted in Bath, where Chris Patton came in, with a massive majority as part of the Thatcher sort of sweep. I voted for a guy called Martin Baber. Nobody's ever heard of him. Just really interesting watching her demeanour, because it starts when she's a member of the opposition, talks about her, then she goes to New York and is feted by some kind of, rather interesting right-wing ideological sort of think tanks.
Yeah.
And she's proposed as this kind of really interesting, economic theorist and all this, and Thatcherism was born.
Yes.
And just the way that she talks to interviewers, the way that she kind of responds, it was so great to see.
She's such a communicator.
She was brilliant. Brilliant. And then they asked her about that guy.
And she believed in something.
They asked her about that guy Rees, who was the
Gordon Rees.
Gordon Rees, who was supposedly the sort of the Svengali.
Yes.
And she and you consult him a lot. She said, "Oh, I think he consults me." And it was just brilliant.
She was quite good. Wasn't
she was quite something. You just yearned for it. If you haven't seen it, and I know that Thatcher is a big divisive figure in our history, but if you get a chance to watch it, I think it's really good. It's well worth doing. So, anything could happen in the next 24 hours, I suppose. I mean, I would ask you to make a prediction, but there's not really any point.
Well, Boris Johnson's going to give this big speech, which will be yet another disappointing anticlimax, proposing this ridiculous scheme to try and pump more money into the housing market, inflate housing prices more, and make sure that houses are even more out of reach.
And reduce housing stock for people who can't afford them. Brilliant. Fantastic. We'll bring you plenty more coming up next.
My friends had to describe me, I don't know, maybe you should ask them. But I think, or I hope they would say, I am the life and the soul of the party. I'll arrive, things get going, things get done. I'm a doer. They'd say that. They'd also say I'm glass half full. I look for the positive things in people's lives, in what's going on. But also, I think they'd say I'm passionate. I'm passionate about what I do, what I support, what I believe in.
is Talk TV News.
Good morning, I'm Emily Rose Adams. The average price of a full tank of petrol for a family car in the UK has hit £100 for the first time. Prices have been rising throughout the week, and the Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove has told Talk TV the impact of the cost of living crisis is painful for families, but said it was down to a number of external pressures.
I don't for a moment deny the fact that with fuel prices increasing, with food prices increasing as well, it is tough out there. This is the consequence of inflationary pressures. The war in Ukraine is a principal factor. It's also the case that some of the strains caused as a result of the COVID pandemic are a factor.
A government review has found the age at which people can legally buy tobacco products in England should rise every year. It's part of government plans to be smoke-free and eradicating smoking by 2030, which would mean less than 5% of the population being smokers. The review was commissioned by the Health Secretary Sajid Javid last year, but ministers are reportedly split on the plans. Boris Johnson set to extend the right to buy to people who rent from housing associations. He also says that lower paid workers will be able to use their housing benefits to obtain mortgages. Well, the Shadow Housing Secretary Lisa Nandy has doubts over whether the plan will work.
If you're on universal credit, you're not allowed to have more than 16,000 in savings, and the reality is most people don't have any at all. Mortgage lenders will be saying to people, well, where's your deposit? I think the reality is that this will help absolutely nobody at all.
Energy watchdog Ofgem has found thousands of customers who lost power during Storm Arwen were provided with an unacceptable service. Nearly 1 million homes were cut off after winds of up to 98 miles per hour battered parts of the UK last November, and around 4,000 were still affected for over a week after. That's all for now. We'll have more in half an hour.
Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham, right here on Talk TV, with you all the way through until 1 o'clock, of course. There's lots going on. We're going to talk about petrol prices. Lots of you are sending me information about what you're seeing. £139.85 to fill my car with diesel, says JB. Then 35 quid for the AdBlue to add to the misery. And that's in the M62 Manchester area. Absolute madness. Incredible. Angela Ewing says this: I filled my tank at Sainsbury's yesterday. Petrol £1.74, cost me £52 for a full tank. £1.74 is actually not too bad. But, you know, people are paying more and more and more money for things that they cannot afford to do. But speaking of things that we cannot afford to have or to do or to spend money on, let's talk about the NHS, because I'm delighted to say we're joined by Dr. Christian Nimitz, Head of Political Economy at the Institute of Economic Affairs. Christian, welcome to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. Let's kick off,
for having me.
First of all, before we talk, about the moment that we saw on social media. I think this came out yesterday, where nurses warning A&E patients that some of them will be waiting up to 13 hours to be seen.
We've currently got 170 patients in the department. That's 170, quite a few. There are 90 patients waiting to be seen at the moment. That's 90 of you are still waiting to be seen. Our current wait time for a doctor is 7.5 hours. I will estimate that by the time I go home in the morning at 8 o'clock, some of you will still be here waiting for a doctor, because the wait will get up to 12 or 13 hours. I will expect that. There are currently no beds in the trust. We're trying to make some space if we can, but...
That was in the waiting room of Princess Alexandra Hospital in Harlow in Essex, right? The nurse basically saying there was 90 people waiting to be seen, that the minimum waiting time for a doctor was over 7 hours, but it might well be more than 13 hours before some people were seen. I mean, Christian, I'm sure this is probably quite a snapshot of something that's happening all over the country in A&E departments, because lots of people are going to A&Es because they can't see their doctor. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it?
Yes, this is the extreme end of a spectrum. I mean, this has been going on since before the pandemic, that waiting times at A&Es and for other things have been creeping up. There's more and more that there's been a large increase in the number of hospital trusts that don't meet the waiting time target, which has become more or less symbolic now. Yes. And, yeah, this is a long-standing issue. Of course, the pandemic hasn't helped. It's made it worse. But you could say that about many other healthcare systems too, and they don't have that problem.
Yes. I mean, many systems were put under strain over the course of the last 2 years in all sorts of different countries of the world. But I think ours is particularly bad. And whenever you and I talk about the NHS, you know, you're always very clear on the fact that there is no other system in the world like it. Nobody else copies it. Nobody else wants to have a system like ours because it's simply unworkable.
Yes, I mean, I've looked at the waiting time figures for the Netherlands the other day. Their waiting times figures during the first year of COVID, and of course they were higher than in a normal year, but they were still better than ours in a good year.
Yeah.
So if you want fast access to treatment, you're better off in the Netherlands at the height of a pandemic than you would be here in a good year. That's the difference.
And that is the difference. And in most countries of the world, there is a sort of mixed system of one kind or another, isn't there? And it's kind of going that way here, because I speak to more and more people on this show, and just friends of mine, who say, well, I've got something that I need to have done. I'm just going to go private because I can't afford to wait for the NHS to see me, never mind actually just check out whether I've got anything wrong with me.
It is happening to some extent. Trouble is that it's happening in a chaotic way, in the worst possible way, because the way it works at the moment is, yes, you can opt out if you have the money to do it, but then
a lot of people
you
who
have a
haven't got
two-tier system.
But even a lot of people who haven't got the money are finding ways of finding the money, if you know what I mean. And just because they're so frustrated, people that call this show tell me, you know, they've been in pain for a year, sometimes more than a year, and they're at the end of their tether, and they're like, well, we have to get something done. And so we're going to find a way of finding a few thousand quid and getting it done privately.
Yes, but that would be a desperate measure. Ideally, I'd rather have a system where you have mixed provision, some public, some private, and in a competitive sector, and where it isn't about how much money you have, that even if you are on a low income, that you could still afford private treatment because it would be routinely available on the statutory healthcare system, and where private healthcare means it's something that you don't clinically have to have, something that is just nice and convenient to have, where that would be the role of the private sector.
I mean, there was a doctor on Jeremy Carl's show yesterday on their political panel, which was fascinating. Russell Quirk was on one side, she was on the other. And she was saying, basically, and she was obviously very much wedded to the whole thing about free at the point of sale and all that kind of thing. And she said it's the private sector that's to blame for the NHS being inefficient, because the private sector takes people out of the NHS, thereby making it more difficult for people to see doctors in the NHS, which I found a very bizarre argument.
Well, the numbers don't stack up here. The private sector is simply too small for that. We have far less private healthcare than pretty much any comparable country. It's about 1/10 of the hospital sector, for example, is private, whereas in continental European countries it would be more like a third in France and Italy. In the Netherlands, they're all private. So the country that has the smallest private sector, it's not plausible to suggest that in that country, the private sector is responsible for the problems of the public system.
No, of course. And I think the point about the NHS, which everybody knows but doesn't say, is that, you know, we set it up in the 1940s. The country was a very different place. It had many fewer people in it. It was much less congested. It was much less full of people. It was much less, you know, shall we say, concentrated in terms of population. And you could have cottage hospitals. You could have, you know, the family doctor who rode around on a bicycle and who went to your house to see you. They can't do that now because there's just too many. The population is too big, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there are some systems that you could broadly compare to the NHS. There are countries that have regional health services, Sweden, for example. It seems to work best in small countries, and that is maybe the only way in which you can do it. But there are no large countries with national health services.
No.
And that is the only places where it works more or less okay would be places where it's quite localised and small countries to begin with.
Sajid Javid and Boris Johnson, both at the weekend before the vote of no confidence happened on Monday, were talking about making some reforms to the NHS, talking about, you know, announcements that were going to be made. I don't know whether those are still going to happen, but they really do need to take a sword to the red tape, don't they, that runs all the way through the NHS, where they've got ludicrous numbers of diversity managers, inclusion jobs. They're saying they're going to try and get rid of some of those, but I mean, it's very endemic in there, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, the fact that you need a government-commissioned report to tell you where the problems are, that is itself not a good sign. We don't do this in other sectors. We don't get government reports saying the supermarkets have to modernise, or the TV stations have to modernise. These are things that these companies have to work out for themselves, and the ones that don't manage to do it lose market share.
Sure. And that's unfortunately true. How about this from John, who says that Britain is turning into a third world country where I can get better healthcare, cheaper fuel and reliable services in northern Cyprus. Those in power can't just keep blaming COVID. COVID has become a kind of a blanket, hasn't it, to hide under and go, oh no, we can't change it because of COVID.
Yeah, but then we always have to highlight COVID wasn't uniquely a problem in Britain.
Right.
It's been a thing everywhere, and other systems have bounced back much quicker.
And that's absolutely right. Also, Sajid Javid says that he's critical of some of the sort of wokery that goes on, where they're going to remove the word women from articles in NHS Digital about ovarian cancer. I mean, there is a sort of madness going on, isn't there?
Yes, he was making the right noises on some of that, and I hope something comes out of that. If it does lead to fewer diversity and inclusion managers being hired, then that can only be a good thing.
Yes.
But it depends on what exactly they make of that recommendation. There is a danger that they will just transfer some of those tasks to conventional managers, and then everyone will have to be a part-time, a bit of a diversity and inclusion manager.
Yes, and then it'll all just slow down even further. Christian, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you. The NHS is a constant conversation on this radio station, on this TV station, so do please, by all means, give us your stories, as we always like to hear them. 0344 499 1000 is the number. Dr. Christian Niemitz there from the IEA, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back with your calls coming next. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham, right here on Talk TV. Terry in Ramsbottom says this: anyone who buys fuel at a motorway service station needs their head testing. I have never bought petrol or diesel at a motorway services. Well then, bully for you, Terry, but I'm afraid an awful lot of people spend their lives driving up and down the motorways of this country, and they don't really have much choice, because it's not particularly practicable to drive off a motorway to look for a petrol station, even if you don't know where one is, even if you do know where one is, because it simply wastes time. because motorway driving, as you know, in this country is a bit hit or miss. You never quite know whether you're going to find a traffic jam or whether you're not, or whether you're going to be stuck in the slow lane or stuck in narrow lanes or stuck in a 50 zone because the prices of fuel are so high now that people want to drive slower. Here's the problem. At the moment, there's an awful lot of profiteering. John Rentoul said he didn't agree with that. I say there's an awful lot of profiteering going on. There are people selling petrol, selling diesel at the pumps for ludicrously high prices. So far today, and I'm sure this will be bested by somebody else, we've found unleaded diesel for £2.04 per litre, right? And if you drive a diesel car, which is modern, you have to add the cost of AdBlue to that. According to the government, greedy petrol stations are going to be chased down because some of them are not even handing out the 5p cut in fuel tax. Well, that's not good enough, I'm afraid. Something is going to have to be done about the cost of fuel, not just because it affects people who drive cars. And if you're one of those selfish cyclist types who goes, oh, well, it doesn't affect me because I use public transport when I go everywhere, well, you probably live in London then, because 80% of people who need a car because there is simply no other way of getting from A to B. They might need to take their kids to school, they might need their car for work, they might need a van for work, they might need a lorry for work, they might drive a bus, they might drive a coach. There's an awful lot of people out there who are reliant upon the cost of fuel not going up in order to make ends meet. And right now, people in government don't seem to get it. It's not good enough to say, make sure you take the 5p off. It's already gone up by 50p. It's already gone up by £1 practically in a year. For heaven's sake, do something. And if you are running a petrol station and you are able to tell me why you keep putting the prices up, I would love to know the answer to that question. Because we've already heard from people on this very channel who have watched the price go up by 6p in one day. I said jokingly yesterday, you'll end up with a situation where you start filling your car at one price, and by the time you finish filling it, it'll have gone up 5p per litre. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Tell us your stories. 0344 499 1000. Let's talk to Phil in Hertfordshire. Hi, Phil.
Good morning, Mike. How are you doing, sir?
Very good, sir. What can I do for you?
I just want to say a statement, Mike.
Go on.
Are we living to survive? Are we living to survive or thrive?
It feels like survival, doesn't it?
Absolutely. We are now living to survive. And I can't help feeling that this is a kind of entrapment. You know, things are not getting any better. Things are just getting worse and worse and worse.
Yeah.
All our pleasures that we work hard for, you know, our holidays, we have our sort of Sky subscriptions and things like that. We're having to lose them just because we've got to now pay more for our fuel, more for our energy. All our pleasures that we graft hard for and work for are slowly being taken away. It's like boiling the frog. Before you know it, we'll be submerged in it. We won't do anything. We won't be able to go out for a coffee. We won't be able to take the kids and nip down the coast for the day because we can't afford it. You know, and, you know, tongue-in-cheek, Mike, you've got the People's, you know, Republic of Mike Graham. It's going to be a republic in this country. Yeah. This is the only way I can see of getting rid of this lot that are absolutely destroying this company.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where it's Labour.
They're taxing us to death as well, aren't they? I mean, we've got the highest taxes in this country since the war. And I'm talking about the Second World War.
Yeah, and anybody that thinks that these politicians care about us, no, they don't. We're just minions to them, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, my dad, bless him, he's got Parkinson's, and he can't get out of the house. His lifeline was Sky TV, Sky Sports, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
We've got to reduce his subscription now, Mike, because I can't afford it.
Yeah.
Because we are looking forward in time to when the heating's got to go on again. They're not going to afford it.
No. I mean, God help us if it's still like this come winter, because people won't be able to afford to heat their homes, and that will then really be a proper crisis.
It will be a crisis, Mike, and I really don't see how some people are going to survive it.
No.
You know, it's terrible, and we've got to wake up and realise what this lot are doing to us.
Yeah.
You know, we need new blood running this country.
Yeah.
And this thing that Johnson's come out with about people on benefits can buy their house, are we that stupid? Does he think...
What a load of rubbish that is.
It's just a vote puller, Mike.
I'm not even sure it is. I'm not even sure they got that right, because, to be honest, I don't think the people who are sitting there on benefits, on housing benefit, are all that bothered about going to the polls to vote for anything.
Well, they're probably not, no, but some of them are going to say, oh, do you know what, we can buy our house now.
Yeah.
They're not going to realise they're going to need a 30, 40, 50 grand deposit.
Yeah.
You know?
I know.
It's
crazy,
nonsense.
isn't it? Absolutely crazy. Listen, Phil, I feel your pain. We're going to keep fighting, though. We're going to keep doing what we do just to try and make sure that we let those people know who are in charge that they're not doing what we want them to do. Got this from Ian, who says 204.9 at Keele Services on the M6 southbound. Just filling the truck up now. It's gone up 3.9 pence overnight. As I was parked at Keele Services northbound last night, it was 201 when I arrived. £800 to fill the truck. 800 quid. Dear God, that's extraordinary. Incredible. Let's talk to David in Coventry. Hi, David.
And Mike, that's a small truck.
800 quid to fill a truck.
That's 400. That's 400 litres. Some of these big transcontinental Arctics, they've got 1,000-litre trucks. So you're talking nearly £2,000.
Incredible. That's incredible.
That's a huge amount of money.
How on earth can people afford to even run trucking companies then?
Well, there are going to be trucking companies going bust. And, of course, bottom line is we all pay for this because everything is going to go up because it has to.
Yeah. Well, of course it does, because everything is delivered by some kind of motorised vehicle.
Yes. Yes. Apart from the hot air of politicians.
Yeah, well, that comes for free, yeah. Well, actually, that doesn't come for free either, because we're paying for that too. We pay them to do it.
We're a pair of cynics.
I mean, I got an MP. I met an MP a couple of years ago, at the start of the pandemic. He's one of the new sort of load of MPs that came in from the Red Wall, and he's moved into a place not far from me. And I met him, and he said, "Oh, I'm living in the same neighbourhood." I said, "Oh, great! So now I'm paying for 2 flats here, yours and mine." You know, brilliant.
Ridiculous. Just a thought. This increase in road fuel is going to be used as an excuse to keep that fuel price high, very high, permanently, to try and force you and me out of our diesel vehicles. I've been thinking, how are the government going to get everybody to give up their petrol cars and their diesel cars? This is a golden opportunity, and the politicians need to have their feet held to the fire on this one. The price of the fuel needs to come down to where it was before when the price of oil comes down.
Yes, absolutely right, because there has to be some connection, because everybody points out to me repeatedly at the moment that back in the last sort of petrol crisis we had, 2008 I think it was, the actual overall price of petrol and diesel and petroleum in the wholesale market was a lot higher than it is now, and yet the prices at the pumps were a lot lower.
Which would signify quite clearly that we are being ripped off.
Yes, totally.
Or should I say, that to use the legal terminology, fraud is being committed against the British public.
Well, we're certainly being rinsed. I can think we can agree on that one.
Because that's what it boils down to. I'm afraid that £2 a litre is ridiculous. The wholesale price of oil is not going up that much. There's not that much of a shortage of oil in the world. We're off, full stop, end of.
Yeah, exactly right. David, thank you very much indeed. This is from Chris. The biggest problem with the fuel price in this country is that VAT is calculated after fuel duty is added to the raw cost of the fuel. We're paying tax on a tax. Changing the system so that VAT is calculated before fuel duty is added would immediately help a lot. Well, there's a good idea. Let's talk to Emma, who's in York. Hi, Emma.
Good morning, Mike. How you doing?
Very well indeed. What can I do for you?
All sorts. I think everyone feels the same, that the world is just completely going to pot.
It really is. There doesn't seem to be anything working at the moment, apart from us.
Nothing. And none of it really is rocket science.
No.
So it is beyond frustration.
So what's the cure, Emma? Give us a clue.
I don't know. Common sense and logic.
Yes.
It would be a good start. But with the NHS I've spoken about before, and just to put it simply again, I think the crux of the problem is the demand outstrips supply.
Yeah.
And that is something that's affecting everything in this country. The population is just simply too large for the landmass.
Yeah.
And it's affecting every public service we have, whether it's housing, and then we're stripping fields to build more housing, and then we're the most biodepleted country in the world, apparently, with how much our biodiversity we have left due to overdevelopment, or whether it's to school places or NHS.
But it's a very unevenly sort of planned country, isn't it? Because there's huge swathes of the country where there's nothing. The Lake District, parts of the West Country, loads of bits of Scotland, loads of bits of Wales, where there isn't anyone.
If you go to other countries as well, you see that actually most countries are like that.
Yeah.
But where we do have population, there's just too many people, and the population is going up and up and up and up, and everything else is breaking. It's like the amount of weight a bridge can take, and our bridge is breaking and cracking.
Yes.
And we lose a lot of NH staff to places like Australia, where the patient-to-staff ratio is amazing.
Yeah.
So they're able to enjoy their job, spend time with the patient, whereas we just don't have time. So you're just a number. You're just passing through.
Well, I think I saw a statistic the other day that said the average doctor in this country now has at least 2,000 patients.
Yeah, I mean, it's mad. And then on top of that, obviously, you've got misuse of the funding. So I've spoke about this before, where you've got huge marketing budgets on city leaflets or building or management and paper pushers. So we're not actually using the budget for staff on the floor that we need.
No.
So, I mean, that is all kind of logical. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was your cost of living stuff.
Yes.
And, you know, you have to keep going back to what... There's lots of links going on with, like, the World Economic Forum saying, oh, you'll own nothing but be happy. I mean, this is something they say. You know, it's not a conspiracy theory.
Oh, no, they say... Listen, people are under a misapprehension that I think they don't exist or something. No, I know what they are. I know what they do. But all I'm saying is they don't run anything. They just come out with a lot of old cobblers all the time.
Yeah. But you have lots of people that head up countries that are all part of the World Economic Forum.
Well, they're not part of it. They're just members of an organisation that meets once a year. That's all it is. It doesn't mean that they're part of it. They don't speak as one voice, do they? That's the point.
See a lot of what they talk about. You start to see common threads. So you see, like, two of our big fertiliser plants are apparently closing now in the UK, and they're talking about the UK not being able to produce their food. And at the same time, you then see Gates apparently has opened his first, like, fake meat factory in the UK.
Yeah, we hear this all the time, though. Listen, you've come at the wrong time, because I'm going to have to go to the news and then everyone will accuse me of cutting you off. I'm not cutting you off. Call me back if you want. We can continue conversations about this. This is, of course, the home of free speech. This is Talk TV.
On TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 11.
Good morning, I'm Emily Rose Adams. The average price of a full tank of petrol for a family car in the UK has hit £100 for the first time. The RAC Motoring Group has called it a truly dark day. Soaring prices have been driven by sanctions on Russia as Europe seeks to reduce its dependence on Russian oil. Well, the Levelling Up Secretary Michael Gove has told Talk TV that he understands the difficulties families face, but said it was down to a number of external pressures.
I don't for a moment deny the fact that with fuel prices increasing, with food prices increasing as well, it is tough out there. This is the consequence of inflationary pressures. The war in Ukraine is a principal factor. It's also the case that some of the strains caused as a result of the COVID pandemic are a factor.
A government review has found the age at which people can legally buy tobacco products in England should rise every year. It's part of government plans to be smoke-free in eradicating smoking by 2030, which would mean less than 5% of the population being smokers. The review was commissioned by the Health Secretary Jagger last year, but ministers are reportedly split on the plans. Boris Johnson will extend the right to buy to people who rent from housing associations as part of a bid to boost home ownership in Britain and move on from questions over his leadership. He'll also say that lower paid workers will be able to use their housing benefits to obtain mortgages. While the Shadow Housing Secretary Lisa Nandy has doubts over whether the plan will work.
You're not allowed to have more than 16,000 in savings, and the reality is most people don't have any at all. Mortgage lenders will be saying to people, well, where's your deposit? I think the reality is that this will help absolutely nobody at all.
A report told power firms to improve their response to storms or homes will face more lengthy power cuts. Millions of people were left without power after Storm Arwen last year. The energy watchdog says many were given an unacceptable service by power providers. A lake in Devon remains closed until further notice as the search continues for two people who went missing after a boat capsized. Emergency services rescued two people safely from the water at Rodeford Lake yesterday afternoon, and another two were taken to hospital in Plymouth. Police confirmed all those involved were local adults and next of kin of those missing had been informed. And new research suggests the number of jobs offering a 4-day week has increased over the past year. Job site CV Library said adverts for 4-day week positions have jumped by around 90%, especially for work in sectors such as charities, sales, distribution and catering. The report comes just days after scores of companies in the UK launched a trial of a 4-day week for their staff lasting 6 months. And now it's time for today's weather.
Times Business sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello, I'm Nazanin Gaffer. Wet and windy weather from the west over the next few days. We are seeing the remnants of Tropical Storm Alex heading towards northern parts of the UK through Friday and Saturday. It's going to bring very windy conditions there. And interestingly, over the next few days, we are also going to see high or very high pollen levels due to the fact that it's going to turn increasingly windy, but also temperatures are going to be rising, especially across southern areas. And we've seen quite a lot of rain recently. As a result, that means there's a lot of grass about and lots of grass pollen levels are going to be high too, mainly across England and Wales. So for today, we are starting off mostly fine and dry, but out towards the southwest, it's already cloudy with some patchy outbreaks of rain. Cloudy across parts of the north as well, brighter further south. That band of rain will be moving its way eastwards through today, mainly reaching central and western parts of the UK, where it will be mostly cloudy with some patchy outbreaks of rain. But across eastern Scotland and eastern parts of England, it looks mostly fine and bright. Then for Friday and for Saturday, as I mentioned, we are going to see the remnants of Tropical Storm Alex approaching northern parts of the UK. It's going to bring very windy conditions across these areas, choppy waters, gales likely around parts of the coast, but calmer across parts of the south, mainly dry and bright.
Sunday Times Culture sponsors Talk TV weather.
The bosses at Talk TV have given me and Mike Graham our own show on Saturday nights. Why am I doing this on my own? It's because Mike Graham's late again. He's always late. I'm sick of this. I was promised Piers Morgan. Now I've got to work with Mike Graham. I've had it.
welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. We're talking about a great many things this morning. We've had a record so far of the highest price yet for fuel, 204.9 pence for a litre of diesel. That was somewhere up on the M62, I believe. We've also had a trucker call in to say it cost him 800 quid to fill up his truck, which is not even the biggest of the trucks, apparently. But imagine filling up and charging £800 for the privilege of that. So keep those pieces of information coming. Keep your pictures coming in as well, please, as well. We'll continue to pass them on to everybody else. Not everybody's paying that kind of money, but an awful lot of people are. And you know what to do, of course. You can tweet it at Talk TV, or you can tweet it at me, which is at IROMG. We're going to speak now to Andrew Allison, Chief Executive of the Freedom Association. Andrew, welcome back. Nice to see you.
Good morning, Mike.
Lots to talk about, really. Petrol prices still, for me, the overarching kind of problem that we face, because yes, we've got rail strikes, yes, we've got the migrant crisis, yes, we've got net zero and all that nonsense, but in the end, the cost of fuel is basically fuelling the cost of everything else, isn't it?
Yeah, most certainly is. I put some diesel in our car yesterday. It was £1.87 basically, which is £8.50 a gallon.
That's pretty good, though.
It is, but it's £8.50 a gallon. You know, when people really think about it. Yes. I mean, a driver bringing me into the studio this morning said he saw £1.97 for diesel in Hampstead yesterday. Although I did say, well, that's Hampstead.
Well, that is Hampstead. Well, they've all got electric cars up there, though, haven't they? I mean, they're all the virtue signalling socialists.
I can't imagine there's many diesels there.
Champagne socialists up there.
But it is ridiculously high, and you've got to think that every time the cost of fuel goes up by 5 pence a litre, there's an extra penny there going on top to the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Rishi Sunak and the Treasury have had a VAT windfall here because of the high fuel prices. I mean, if you go back just before the budget in March, a local station near me was selling diesel around about 163, 164. Yeah. Now, presumably, 5 pence a litre went off that after Rishi Sunak reduced the fuel duty. Yeah. It's now selling at 196, 197.
Yes. And there's no rhyme or reason for that. I was talking to John Rentoul earlier about this. The point about the way the prices are going up is that there doesn't seem to be any logic to it, because the 5p off, the government are saying today they're going to go after greedy retailers who haven't taken the 5p off. But the 5p off might as well have not been done, because it's risen since then by about 30p. And a couple of people talking to me today saying prices have gone up by as much as 6p overnight. Yeah. There's no reason for that, other than just price gouging, is there?
No, and I mean, I've heard from, well, on your show, Howard Cox from Fair Fuel UK saying that the wholesale price of diesel was supposed to be about 8 pence a litre cheaper than petrol. And yet, on average, diesel, certainly a week or so ago, was 15 pence a litre more expensive than petrol. Yeah. So there isn't any sense to it. But, you know, Rishi Sunak gave us that 5 pence a litre cut, and if you remember the way he did it, it's not a penny, it's not 2 pence. It's I thought, who do you think you are, Paul Daniels?
I know. And unfortunately, the rabbit he pulled out of the hat was already dead, because I was hoping he might go, it's 20p. But no.
Well, I think we're all hoping that. But the thing is, he's now making more in those extra VAT receipts. So he really hasn't given anything away. No. And he's making more money.
And it was pointed out by a viewer earlier who said if they put the VAT basically on the cost of the fuel before the fuel tax, that would be a lot cheaper as well, because what they do is they add the VAT on after the fuel tax.
Oh, yeah, you've got fuel duty, and then you put VAT on the fuel duty, and then you got the other costs associated with fuel. And then, it's a tax on tax, and they put VAT on top of that. So, it's very expensive. I think it's around about 90 pence a litre, which is over £4 a gallon.
Yes.
So, you know, when people are putting about 100 quid's worth of fuel in their car, it's about 50 quid is going straight to the Exchequer. So the Exchequer is getting a tax windfall here. Now, Rishi Sunak is very keen to tax the oil companies when they have a windfall. Right. Well, he now needs to start giving us some of our money back. Well, yeah. Because this is putting we all know this. It's putting the price of everything up in the shops.
Of course it is, because everything, I mean, I'm assuming as well that people who were used to getting a lot of Amazon deliveries are not doing that as much, because that will slow the Amazon deliveries down, because every time the Amazon delivery comes, that's going to cost them more money. So the whole thing is a complete and utter sort of vicious circle. But Rishi Sunak and Boris Johnson are supposedly going to announce something next week. John Rentoul tells me it's been put off, but they were supposed to be announcing some tax cuts. I don't know where they're going to do that, though.
Well, fuel is one of them. We spoke about this before, and you've got the green levy, 25% thereabouts.
Yes, but they're not going to get rid of that.
But well, I don't think they are going to get rid of it. But if you're looking for places where they could, that certainly is one of them. What about the national insurance increase that has
well, where's that going? You know, they said that it was going to help to get rid of the backlog on the NHS. Clearly, that's not going to happen, because even if they give it straight to the NHS, that's not going to make any difference. We're now told we're going to be waiting at minimum 5 years, maybe 7, before we can get many operations that we need.
Well, yeah, I think we're talking about 6-7 million people on waiting lists. That is going to take many years to clear. But of course, the increase in national insurance was supposed to pay for social care, wasn't it? Well, it is eventually.
Originally, they said that, but apparently we're now still in a situation where many elderly patients in hospital can't be released into social housing or social care because there simply isn't any.
Yes, exactly.
And it's not there. It's a real, you know, well, I can't actually use the word I want to use, but it ends with storm, because it's like nothing seems to be working, does it?
Yeah, I thought it was going to be with cluster at one point.
Well, that's also a good way to talk about it. Meanwhile, the other big story to talk about this morning, the migrant flights to Rwanda. According to the Daily Mail this morning, lawyers set to ground first Rwanda flight. Now, Richard Tice will be sitting at home rubbing his little hands together because he keeps saying to me that this will never work and that I'm completely wrong to believe in it. I still think it will work if we ever get people to Rwanda. I don't know why the government is so kind of reluctant just to push on ahead with it.
I think it will work eventually, but, you know, quelle surprise when it comes to the lawyers getting involved and trying to block this. There's going to be a lot of legal action going on before this happens. But isn't it a bit of a cop-out for the government to say, oh, we can't do anything because the lawyers have stopped us? Well, surely you're the government. You're supposed to get around that. You're supposed to find ways to get around illegal immigrants coming to this country and trying to live here when they have no right to do so. The lawyers will delay it, Mike, without a doubt. But I don't think they will ultimately prevent it. But the government's got to jump through a few legal hoops to get there. But I think eventually it will happen because we really need to do something about it. I mean, because it's like we heard, did we not? I think last week that 10,000 have already arrived this year alone, right? Which puts us well on track to get again something in the order of 25,000-30,000 people by the end of the year. In fact, it might even increase because as the summer months are relatively calm, more and more people will come. Well, I read some stats a few weeks ago, and I quoted them to Julia, and I can't remember them exactly, but the EU is basically rubbish at getting rid of illegal migrants out of the EU. So eventually a lot of those people do migrate towards the north and then try to get across there. But you've also got the people smugglers and the people traffickers. Who are making a fortune. No, come on, the authorities in Europe know exactly who these people are. They must do. But there's no will there to prevent it from happening. But of course the Europeans as well, or those who run the European Union, are of the opinion that, you know, well, Britain should take more of its fair share. You hear that all the time, don't you? From the people who think that this is okay, who obviously are not affected by the influx of loads and loads of people in their communities who aren't supposed to be there. They say, oh, but, you know, France takes many more migrants than we do. Germany takes... Well, they're bigger countries. And they've got more room in them and fewer people per square mile. We are full. It's as simple as that. We're a very crowded island. And, of course, sadly, those people do come across, often end up in modern slavery as well. Yeah, of course they do. Well, there's no doubt in my mind that most of these people coming are, at least if they weren't, when they got into the boat, attached to some kind of organised crime scenario, when by the time they get off the boat, they are, because they obviously owe money. I mean, they don't look, they might look as if they've got reasonably good health and they're wearing reasonably modern clothes, but they don't look like people that could hand 5,000 to 10,000 quid to a people trafficker, do they? No, they don't, although they have thrown every bit of documentation away in the English Channel, of course. Well, they've all got mobile phones. You know, now, call me old-fashioned, but that doesn't look... They don't look that desperate to me, most of the people getting off these boats. They're mostly, they just want a better... Look, they're mostly young men, they want a better life, or maybe they don't even want a better life. Maybe they're coming here as part of an organised crime operation. Well, that's possible. Well, that is possible, but I don't blame... anyone for wanting to get into the UK. You know, I was coming back from holiday in Warsaw recently, you know, and we're queuing up at Luton Airport at the passport control. The romance of travel. Romance of travel, indeed. And I got my British passport out. You know, and I was just thinking to myself at the time, how many people actually want one of these? how many people are desperate to come here. And it's a fantastic country. We know it's a fantastic country.
Well,
so I don't blame people.
It's not as fantastic as it used to be. Nobody can afford to buy any petrol. You can't get to see a doctor. It's quite difficult to get on a flight to go anywhere. So good luck getting back into to Britain because you managed to do so. But, it's a very, very complicated country, this now.
Yeah, it is, but I still think it's
still a great place to live.
It's still a great place to live. So, but I don't blame people for wanting to come here. But at the same time, they've got to enter here legally, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So
and the excuse I love that's used by the lefties and those who think that the world should be open to everyone and it doesn't matter who they are, they can just go and live wherever they like, is that, well, of course, it doesn't matter that they're coming here illegally because we should be welcoming them all. And, well, it doesn't quite work like that, does it?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work like that. I mean, the population of the UK has gone up, I think it's around about 10 million in the last 20-25 years.
Certainly within the last 2 or 3 decades.
Since Tony Blair came in.
Funnily enough, yeah. Well, I'll never forget Tony Blair's offer to the people of Poland to come to Britain to work. And do you remember the Labour Party said there would be about 15,000 Polish people coming here? Do you know how many actually came? 1 million. And, I mean, many of them came here to work, and they were a great addition, actually, to the economy. I, myself, utilised some fantastic Polish guys to replaster a house that I'd bought because I couldn't get anybody in Scotland to do it. But these guys turned up, sort of 15 of them, and it was brilliant. And many of them went back and made a lot of money and have now gone back to Poland. And that's all fine because that's the kind of migration, I suppose, that if you need it because you need to fill jobs, that's something that you can do. But the bottom line is that the government got the numbers absolutely and utterly tragically wrong.
Well, they did.
By a factor of about 100 times.
Well, as I said, I've come back from Warsaw, and I'm assuming that Warsaw, being the capital of Poland, is probably more expensive than other parts of Poland. But, I mean, the average salary in Poland is around about half of what our average salary is. I mean, we went to a lovely Italian restaurant, really, really good high-quality food, wine, and it was all coming in at under 40 quid for us.
Wow. That's amazing.
And it would have been about 80 to 100 in London at least.
Minimum, absolutely right. It is seemingly possible to go to almost any other country and find things that are cheaper, that work better, and are somehow what we should be having here, but we don't have it, which is very odd. Andrew Allison's here. We've got more to talk about. We'll take more of your calls as well, 0344 499 1000. Let's also get more of your views on what's going on out there in the big wide world. Many of you telling me exactly how much you're paying for fuel. So far, the record is 204 pence per litre, 204.9 pence per litre for diesel, somewhere on the M62. If you can beat that, do let us know. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk TV. Welcome back to the Independent Republican Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. We're going to talk to James Evans coming up shortly. He's a member of the Welsh Parliament, now called the Senedd. It used to be called the Welsh Assembly. Apparently that wasn't big enough for them, so they now call it the Senedd. They want to make it bigger, believe it or not. They want to put more politicians in there and cost us even more money to run Wales. Absolutely extraordinary. They're also trying to attempt to become the first anti-racist nation. Not quite sure what that means. Andrew Allison's here with us, Chief Executive of the Freedom Association. I suppose I should ask you, Andrew, what your take is on the Boris Johnson situation, because everybody's got a view. Mine is that, you know, I called for him to go last year because I thought it was time, and I thought he was running everything into the ground. He's still running everything into the ground, but I didn't think that this week and Partygate was a good reason to get rid of him.
He survived, hasn't he?
He has. There's no question about that.
I mean, come on. I mean, 41% of his MPs did vote against him, and that's a sizable number. I think as long as he takes that, tries to understand the reasons why they've done that, and then turn it around, he's probably going to be okay. Yes. Because let's be honest, Keir Starmer is not exactly Mr.
Keir
Charismatic.
Starmer, I said this to John Rentoul this morning. Keir Starmer, unbelievably yesterday, had a bigger open goal than he's ever had.
Yeah, he missed it completely, didn't he?
And he just completely missed not only the goal, I think the ball's still travelling somewhere.
He also misjudged the mood of his own backbenchers, Mike, because they were wanting him to sock it straight to Boris Johnson, and he didn't. He failed.
No. And I think the problem with the 148 who voted against Boris is that they didn't necessarily do it for policy reasons. I think they just don't like him. And let's remember, an awful lot of those were probably people that would have wanted to remain in the EU. There's still a rump of those in that party. I know some, not all of them were that.
No, I was talking to a couple yesterday who were exactly on the opposite end, who were Brexiteers.
Oh no, listen, I know there's some of those as well, but I think the main reason for them voting to say that they don't have confidence in him is nothing to do with what I would say I don't have confidence in him for, which is the net zero obsession, you know, the failure to deal with the migrant problem, the cost of living crisis that he's not dealing with. I don't think it's any of that. I think it's just because they think he's a bad guy.
Well, it's possible. Look, 148 MPs. It's not some organised coup, as some people are trying to say. You can see it's people come from different wings of the
It's a very disorganised coup, if it's anything.
Well, put it this way, if it was really highly organised, they would have gone and made sure that the 54th letter went in after the by-elections at the end of this month.
Very possibly so. And, I mean, they've also kind of been written in as well. Some people are saying to me, oh, well, wait till the by-election results are so bad that he'll have to go. Well, not really, because everybody's now expecting the by-election results to be really bad. Nobody's expecting the Tories to keep either of those seats.
No, I mean, Wakefield is definitely gone.
Yeah.
The Tiverton and Honiton is certainly looking like it's going towards the Lib Dems.
Yeah.
So,
and the Lib Dems always do well in by-elections anyway.
They do, but I think the Conservative Party has to be really careful, because in some of those southern constituencies, the so-called blue wall, the Lib Dems could do well at the next general election. And, you know, I mean, they're around, what, 13 seats now. I mean, they could go up into the 30s quite easily. And that's taking 20 seats away from Boris.
This government does have a bit of a whiff of the kind of last years of John Major, doesn't it? I mean, it's for different reasons, but it's all over the place. And people need a bit of confidence in the people running the country to say, look, I believe these are the right people to steward us through this particularly patchy period. But I'm not sure there's a lot of people who would say that right now.
Well, all I will say is that Boris Johnson has got 2 years, effectively. I can't see us going through to another December general election in 2024. It's going to be more likely the spring of 2024. So he's got 2 years. And if he wants to continue, he's got to turn this around. We need to see some Brexit dividends, don't we?
Well, let's see some Brexit dividends. Let's see the Northern Ireland Protocol being done away with. Let's see taxes being brought down. Let's see, you know, the cost of living and inflation at least getting under control, because at the moment it's just out of control.
And also things to do with cancel culture, free speech issues. All of these things are important. I mean, I'm not saying that they will be at the top of people's agenda, because I think actually living, you know, being able to afford to
surviving,
and survive, is right at the top of people's agenda. But you know, there was a survey done a couple of years ago that highlighted that people feel that they're just not free to speak their mind anymore.
No,
not in the way they were just 5 years ago.
Well, I mean, funnily enough, I was hearing a story this morning, and I'm not at all saying that, and I'm even having to caveat it before I say it, not at all saying that I would agree with this guy, but apparently there's some guy working at TikTok who's been suspended from his job because he made a speech in which he said that he didn't think that there should be maternity leave for women. And, you know, it's a view. You know, you might say it's not a view that anybody in a company that's modern should hold.
It's very brave for a man to say, isn't it?
Well, it is. But, you know, why has he been suspended? Why don't you just take him inside and say, look, mate, that wasn't a very smart thing to say. And by the way, our policy actually is that if you are a woman and you are pregnant, you are entitled to maternity leave.
Yeah.
But you don't sack him for it, do you?
No, you don't.
Which is effectively probably what's going to end up happening, because there's an outcry and people are outraged because they're always outraged by stuff. I mean, I'm not outraged by that. It's a stupid thing to say, and it's not something that any sensible person would support.
It is.
But you don't kick the guy out of his job.
Well, no. I mean, I've worked in an office where it's been, you know, probably about 75–80% women.
Yeah.
And I certainly would not have been brave enough to have said that in the office.
Torn limb from limb. Speaking of freedom of speech, the other big story on this front this week is The Lady of Heaven, this film which I've got no intention of seeing and I've got absolutely no interest in at all. But I understand it's a spat between the Sunnis and the Shia Muslims. There's been demonstrations in all sorts of places up and down the country, Bradford, even Stratford here in London, and Cineworld has cancelled the viewings and has basically cancelled the film as a result. So I think people like yourself will probably feel that's a step too far, isn't it?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, the Sunnis make up about 85–90% of all Muslims. The Shias are a much smaller group, and this film was written by a Shia. So it's a little bit like, you know, the Protestants and the Catholics having a spat about something in the Bible.
Yes,
you know, that's the only analogy I can come up with. It's far from accurate and but that's what it's like.
Yeah.
But we don't have blasphemy laws in this country. We got rid of blasphemy laws, and they're starting to come in now. I've got absolutely no objection to a group of people standing outside a cinema, waving placards, using a megaphone, and saying that they don't like this film.
Well, they can have that as a part of their freedom of speech.
That is part of their freedom of speech. But we've seen the threats, haven't we? You know, if you do this to our beloved prophet, you know, peace.
There will be consequences.
There'll be consequences, and it's become very nasty.
Yeah.
And it sets a dangerous precedent. It's also interesting that Bradford is going to be the new city of culture.
Interesting, yes.
And about a week later, they're banning films.
Yes. I know, it doesn't really quite...
So, you know, we need to be careful about it.
Where are the city fathers and mothers and sisters and brothers and people of non-binary origin? Where are they standing up and saying, we're the city of culture, this is not right? Why are they not saying that?
Well... Sorry, that's really made me laugh, that one.
But, you know, because the point is that you're quite right. I mean, Anne Widdecombe was on yesterday and she was talking about her objection to The Passion of the Christ, that Mel Gibson film. But she said she equally understood that people have a right to do those kinds of films and to make them, even if there are certain people from certain religions who don't like them.
Precisely. I mean, I was too young when The Life of Brian came out in the 70s. Yeah. But I mean, my father is a former Salvation Army officer, former Methodist local preacher, been dead a few years now. But, you know, he just thought, well, some of it was funny. I didn't find other things funny.
Yeah.
But so what? You know,
you wouldn't be basically firing anybody over it.
He wasn't going down, because there were a lot of Christians at the time saying, ban it. No, you can't do that. We've all got a right to poke fun at religion, no matter who that religion is. Although I do remember an interview that I did on BBC Three Counties Radio a few years ago, where I was told by the presenter, well, Muslims don't really have a sense of humour, do they? Whereas Christians can take it on the chin a bit more.
Oh, yeah.
And that's the reason why we should be careful about this. Well, no, I'm sorry, I totally disagree.
No, because all human life is the same, as far as I'm concerned. Yes. Everybody's treated the same. You all have the same rights. You have the right to be taken out of context. You have the right to be taken a strip off. You have the right to be insulted. You know, you also don't have the right to be offended.
Correct.
You know? You can be offended, but it doesn't matter. I can offend you right now, but I don't care.
Well,
I mean, aside from the obviously niceties of being polite, but I mean, I shouldn't care about whether you're offended by something, is what I mean.
No, I totally agree with you. But the producers of this film, of course, will be delighted, because it's, you know, it's a bit like Lady Chatterley's Lover, this, isn't it? You know, they sell more copies.
Without the sex,
people presumably. Well, definitely without sex, yeah.
We shall see. Listen, great to see you. Andrew Allison there, of course, from the Freedom Association. He'll be back from time to time, weather permitting, and, of course, trains permitting as well, because he comes down on one from time to time. We'll talk some more about the rail strike. We'll talk some more about the petrol problem. We'll talk some more about Wales coming up next. This is Talk TV.
My friends had to describe me, I don't know, maybe you should ask them. But I think, or I hope they would say, I am the life and the soul of the party. I'll arrive, things get going, things get done. I'm a doer. They'd say that. They'd also say I'm glass half full. I look for the positive things in people's lives, in what's going on. But also, I think they'd say I'm passionate. I'm passionate about what I do, what I support, what I believe in.
This is Talk TV News.
Good morning, I'm Emily Rose Adams. The average price of a full tank of petrol for a family car in the UK has hit £100 for the first time. The RAC Motoring Group has called it a truly dark day. Soaring prices have been driven by sanctions on Russia as Europe seeks to reduce its dependence on Russian oil. A government review has found the age at which people can legally buy tobacco products in England should rise every year. It's part of government plans to be smoke-free and eradicating smoking by 2030, which would mean less than 5% of the population being smokers. Boris Johnson will extend the right to buy to people who rent from housing associations as part of a bid to boost home ownership in Britain and move on from questions over his leadership. He'll also say that lower paid workers will be able to use their housing benefits to obtain mortgages. While the Shadow Housing Secretary Lisa Nandy has doubts over whether the plan will work.
If you're on universal credit, you're not allowed to have more than 16,000 in savings, and the reality is most people don't have any at all. Mortgage lenders will be saying to people, well, where's your deposit? I think the reality is that this will help absolutely nobody at all.
The Ministry of Defence says Russian forces are aiming to gain ground outside the eastern Ukrainian city of Izium in order to put further pressure on the besieged city of Severodonetsk. It's as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky warned the fate of the region in the war could be decided by the fighting there. Communities worst affected by Storm Arwen will be given £3.5 million in redress payments. It's after a report from energy watchdog Ofgem said many were given an unacceptable service by power providers. Millions of people were left without electricity when the storm hit last year. And Prince William has been pictured selling the big issue in central London. The future king donned a red seller's vest and a hat in Westminster. Kensington Palace says it's connected to a project for his 40th birthday. That's all for now. We'll have more in half an hour.
Welcome back to the Independent Republican Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. We're still looking, of course, out there for you to help you decide where it is that the most expensive fuel actually is in this country. So far, we believe it's 204.9, somewhere up on the M62. We'll try and get that precise location for you. But do please let us know if you've seen it any higher than that, and just let us know what it's costing you where you are. Because so many people, I'm afraid, at this point in time, can't actually afford to fill their own tank. It's getting ridiculous. Many of you having to now pay over £100. The average cost to fill an average family car, well over £100. It's an absolute outrage. Something's going to have to be done. The government is going to have to reduce fuel tax in some way, shape or form. The 5p off by Rishi Sunak that happened a couple of months ago is of no use to man or beast, or indeed anything in between. The point is they've got to reduce the fuel tax altogether, or they've got to do what one of our listeners suggested, which is to reduce the VAT by only charging it on the actual petrol and the fuel itself, not on the fuel plus the fuel tax. Because that's what the VAT means. The price of the VAT goes up and up and up and up, and that is simply not good enough. So let's do now something completely different. We were talking about Monty Python. James Evans is here. He's a member of the Senate. He's the policy director for the Welsh Conservatives in the Senate. It did used to be called the Welsh Assembly in my day, but they've changed the name of it now. Now they actually want more politicians in it, for heaven's sake. James, a very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Good to talk to you again. What was the reason why they changed it from the Welsh Assembly? Wasn't that posh enough for them?
No, it was when we got legislative lawmaking powers. They wanted to change it to the Welsh Parliament at the time. It was supported unanimously in the Senate. But we are in a situation now, though, as we're going to go on to probably, where they now say they need 36 more politicians to carry out the work to function as a parliament, which is totally inappropriate in my view.
And how many are there at the moment?
There are 60 of us now, and they want to put another 36 bums on seats in the Senate chamber to scrutinise the government, is the way this is being badged.
Well, so now they want a more than 50% increase in personnel, which would presumably lead to another 100-odd people, because every single one of the politicians needs at least maybe 2 or 3 aides, right?
Well, exactly, and this is what the point I made yesterday when we discussed this in the chamber. That's 36 more politicians, which is going to cost £100 million over 5 years, but that doesn't include the costs for aides for members of the Senate. It doesn't include costs for the Senate Commission, for people to help with committees and look after members from that side of things. There's going to be major structural changes to the buildings which we use because there isn't the capacity in them at the minute. This is going to cost an extortionate amount of money at a time when we have a fuel crisis, a cost of living crisis, when people can't fill up their cars. The Labour government in Cardiff is more concerned about spending 100 million of taxpayer money on politicians. I just don't think this is appropriate.
Yeah, and what's their reasoning as to what the workload actually is? You know, I mean, why do they need more work to be done, first of all? And I mean, are you terribly overwhelmed with work, for example?
I think I'm very busy because I'm a constituency member and I like to get out and about my constituency. But in the Senate, we have 2 days a week, which is parliamentary sitting time. They sit 3 days a week in Scotland and they sit 5 days a week in Westminster. I think we need to look at our own processes first before we think about increasing the number of politicians. They say this is all going to be done to increase scrutiny. This is not going to be done to increase scrutiny. It's to give the Labour Party in Wales a supermajority, so they are locked into power for life. And if the Westminster government proposed something like this, I'm sure they'd have plenty to say on that matter.
Well, I mean, to be honest, I'd quite like to see the Westminster Parliament being reduced by 50% rather than increased by 50%, because they've got, by far and away, way too many politicians in there. Because if you look at somewhere like India, for example, which is a much bigger country, they've actually got fewer MPs in their parliament than we have.
Well, I agree with you, and that's why we've got things like the reform coming through the Parliament to reduce the number of MPs. But what I want to see as well is the House of Lords also being reformed. There's far too many people in the House of Lords, and from my point of view, there's far too many Liberal Democrats in the House of Lords who actually aren't respective of their communities and the society where we are at the minute. So the Lords need reform because the cost of politics across the country is far too much, and we need to reduce the cost of politics and actually get people in politics who've got real life experiences, who relate to people, who actually can try and solve problems out which we've got in our country.
Yes. I mean, this is the other problem that we have, isn't it, with the way the Lords is put together. You know, every single year people get added in without anybody moving out. So it's now up above 800, I think, in terms of the representation that we have there. And as you quite rightly say, there's many more Lib Dems than there are in the country in terms of population and in terms of percentage. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly, and that's why, you know, as Welsh Conservatives here, you know, we're very keen to see a reform to the House of Lords because we want to see the cost of politics reducing. In Wales, we've got over 1,200 odd county councillors. The Welsh Labour government have tried and failed for years to reduce those numbers because as soon as they start mooting it, you get the Labour uproar in the union saying you can't do that. And I think, as I said before, if we can reduce the cost of politics across the country, that money would be far better spent helping people who are facing those tough choices at the minute between heating their homes and eating.
Yeah, it's really ridiculous. What's this other story about, which is rather a strange one, James? Ministers outline the aims for Wales to become an anti-racist nation. I mean, do you have to put that into statute, really?
Well, this is the problem with the Welsh Parliament. We're discussing non-issues at the minute. You know, this has been brought forward by a Welsh Labour government who's been in power in Wales for over 22 years. So if there is a problem with racism in Wales, it's because the Welsh Labour government have never tackled it. We have debates like this over and over and over in the Senate chamber. And as I said earlier, when there are huge issues facing people in this country and the tough choices they have to make for the Welsh people, discussing issues like this, which I believe they are issues, but unfortunately they're not the important issues of the day. And the government in Wales like to discuss these because they hide away from their failings on the economy, education and the health service.
It really is quite an extraordinary state of affairs because, I mean, Wales to me is a very unique part of the British sort of whole, the union of nations that we are. And it seems a shame that they and Scotland and some people in Northern Ireland want to kind of, you know, annex it, because Wales is probably, out of all of those regions, the least likely to be self-sufficient, isn't it?
It would be, and that's one thing which I think people in Wales will be very cautious of, and all these politicians who are calling for independence. I have never been convinced by any nationalist argument put forward by Plaid Cymru or members of the Labour Party of why Wales could be a nation on its own. We are far better together, and I will tell you, Mike, I am probably one of the proudest Welsh people you can ever come across. You know, I was cheering on the football the other night.
Yeah.
I was cheering I cheer for the rugby.
What a great result, by the way. I should have mentioned that at the start, you know.
For Wales, you know, it's a fantastic result for the Welsh nation. It just shows that we can punch above our weight. But on a national stage, we are better together, and these arguments all the time for pulling us apart just don't cut the mustard. It's just complete lunacy.
Right. And in my experience of most people in Wales that I speak to, and I can't obviously say anything other than that's a snapshot of public opinion, my sense is that most people in Wales want to be part of Britain.
They do want to be part of Britain. You know, Wales is very proud of the fact that what Britain is now was built on Welsh people. You know, Welsh steel went around the world. Welsh coal went around the world. Wales was the powerhouse of the British Empire at one point. I know people don't like talking about the empire anymore, but unfortunately that's history, and yes. Wales did power the empire. So Wales plays a very important role in our national history and the history of our country.
And some people even think the Stonehenge stones came from Wales.
They probably did, and most of the best things in our country come from Wales over the years.
Well, I can probably name a couple of things that didn't, but there we are. Listen, James, great to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. James Evans there talking to us from the Welsh Senedd, where they want to increase the number of politicians. I mean, who in their right mind wants more politicians? That's what the problem is in this country. We want fewer, not more of them, for heaven's sake. 0344 499 1000 is the number. I've just tweeted out that we are looking for the most expensive petrol in Britain. So far, it is, in fact, I got it wrong. It's at Keel Services, 204.9 M6 southbound. Look out for that. This is Talk TV. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. We mentioned earlier, of course, the Michael Gove interview with Julia Hartley-Brewer. Paul in Aberdeen says, Mike, so the taxpayer through the benefits system will be paying the mortgages for people on benefits, giving them even less incentive to get a job because the mortgage then becomes their responsibility. Utter madness. It does seem a bit weird, although I'm pretty sure I heard Michael Gove saying this morning that once they start to make the transition from renting to buying their house, once they get a mortgage, they will no longer be on housing benefit. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work, though, because if you're in a position where you have a mortgage to pay and you can't pay it because you're unemployed, then presumably you get housing benefit to pay it, don't you? So I think Paul in Aberdeen might be right. It's a mad idea. Totally mad. Let's talk to Rob in Bridgend. Hi, Rob.
Hi, Mike. How are you doing?
Good, sir. What can I do for you?
Well, I just want to give you an update on some fuel prices.
Yeah, go on.
Every single moto service owned by Moto on the motorway in the UK.
Right.
It's 104.9.
So they're all the same price?
Yeah. So I did a little, that's for diesel. I did a little bit of digging.
Yeah.
And I found out that Moto services are jointly owned by a company called University Superannuation Services.
Do you mean 204.9? You don't mean 104.9, do you?
Oh, 204.9, sorry, yeah.
I was going to say, hang on a minute, you're going to start a run on the petrol at the Moto service. You're going to crash this half price.
Wishful thinking, I was. Yeah, but they're owned by this company called University Superannuation Services, which is basically it's part of the public sector pension scheme.
Okay.
So I want to know how they can afford to buy moto services.
Yes.
Is that with public money? Two, I've been through a list of their directors on Companies House, and like university lecturer. So I just like something to dig a bit. I mean, I'm not a sort of person that can research this. Why is the main service provider in this country owned by a university superannuation scheme?
That's very interesting.
Are they putting the price of petrol up to prop up their pensions?
Well,
is that the reason?
That's a very, very good point. I don't know the answer to that, but I'm going to look into it.
If you could look in, like I say, I'm not good at research, but I did a little bit of digging. I just wanted to find out. Talk
to Sarah before you get off, when you get off the phone with me, and leave her the name of the organisation, and we'll check it out.
Yeah, no worries.
Good stuff. Rob, thanks very much indeed. You see, this is the trouble. This is when you find out what's going on in this country, because there's an awful lot of people making an awful lot of money, and many of them we don't know. Many of them we've never heard of. Many of them are doing it at our expense, and we have no clue. So Moto Services all charging 204.9 up and down the country. If that's right, we will find out who owns them. We will find out whether it's part of some pension superannuation scheme, and if so, are they actually driving the prices? Because I'm convinced, John Rentoul says it's not happening, which convinces me even more that it is. He says there's no profiteering. Well, what's the explanation then? Why are prices going so high if the basic price and the wholesale price is not so high? Let's talk to William, who's in West Sussex. Hello, William.
Oh, hi, Mike. How you doing?
Good. What can I do for you?
Well, actually, what I was going to say is the definition of slavery is when you work for no benefit at all. You work for the benefit of others. And this is now what we have in this country. And actually, we really have got our only ourselves to blame. We work hard, we pay our taxes so that we can provide a fantastic income and pension for the intelligentsia, those people that basically hate our country, hate what I would call the true working class, those who actually go out to work.
Yes.
And this is what happens as well when you decide that you want to lick the backside of the Green lobby. We have literally got what we asked for. We believe in, they've encouraged us to all believe in global warming and the climate change, and therefore we've got to put up the price of fuel, we've got to put up the cost of producing electricity. This is what we've got ourselves into.
Yes. The thing that's interesting about that, right, if they really wanted us to buy into the green energy debate, I've always said this, look, if you want to make electric cars half the price of petrol cars, I might buy one. If you make electricity produced by green energy half the price of fossil fuel, then fine, you've got me on board. But don't make it more expensive, which is what they've done.
But why are they doing this? Because the intelligentsia are basically Marxist a group.
Well, they're not really Marxists. They're all about making money. They want to make as much money as they possibly can.
You know what? I've always said there's two types of people who are into the green lobby. Those who actually want to bring down capitalism, like your Looney Lucases and that lot, because they actually want us to all live like Tom and Barbara Good in some kind of middle-class socialist utopia, which they probably watched whilst watching The Good Life during the 1970s. And then you've got the ones who have gone, oh, I think I can make some money here.
Yes.
I don't know who's worse. So you've got the Tory landowners who are thinking, no, I'm not a Marxist.
Yeah.
I'm just going to make loads of money by getting a wind farm on my land. And
getting a subsidy.
You've got the other and then you've got the other type. But the other type, they're the really dangerous ones because they basically want communism, but they know no one would ever vote for it. So they use the green climate change agenda as a Trojan horse to get what they want, which they know no one would ever vote for it. Yeah. So we've got to stop licking the backside of these people on the proper green, the radical left. And do you know what really... It kind of upsets me in a way. So I mean, like Kevin does this, your best bud.
Yeah.
He does this. When he ever gets someone from the climate change lobby come in, the first thing he says things like, I do agree that there's a problem, but I think you're going around about it the wrong way. No. The journalists like yourself, I actually think you're probably okay, but there isn't a problem.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, I agree with you. I don't think there's a problem, and I never say that.
I know you don't, but I say, stop saying like Ian Collins today. If he interviews someone from Just Stop Oil, say, look, I do agree that you've got a problem. You know, we got a problem. No, there isn't. Yeah. There is not a climate change problem. If you pay scientists to find evidence of global warming, they will find evidence of global warming.
Yeah. Yeah, but they also haven't found evidence that anything is going to change radically. All they've got is a bunch of models that they project into the future, which they say will mean that such and such a thing will happen.
They fly a scientist up to the North Pole, he drills a hole, produces this big tube of ice and says, look, that's evidence of climate change. Yeah. And then all the middle-class morons in this country go, oh, my God, look. We're going to die in 10 years. So they're mad.
I saw a report last week, right? A report last week came out about the state of the coastline of this country, right? In which it was projected that places like Sunderland would fall into the sea, right? Yeah. And a place called Pevensey Bay on the south coast, which I happen to know quite well, would become a victim of coastal erosion. Well, first of all, Pevensey Bay is completely flat. So there's no such thing as coastal erosion on a beach. The sea, if it comes in any further, will come in a bit further. That doesn't mean you're eroding any houses.
You shouldn't confuse coastal erosion with climate change. No. Coastal erosion is just water lapping up against soil, and you know what? Water wins.
Well, no, it can make cliffs disappear. That can happen, but not in Pevensey Bay, where there aren't any cliffs.
But it just goes to show that the groupthink maniacs in this country, who are supposed to be clever as well, because basically I've always said what they've done is they've gone to university so that they can surrender all ability of independent thought to the prison cell of groupthink.
Yes, my father used to describe them as overeducated.
Yeah, well, do you know what? I think the only hope this country now has is actually that Boris had used his 80-seat majority to literally not have a bonfire of the Quangos, it should napalm the Quangos. Literally napalm, because they're all infested by these intelligentsia lefties who are all on about 80 grand a year. You know what?
Minimum.
Funded by you and me, who have we have surrendered our disposable income to maintain their fantastic lunatic lifestyle.
Exactly right. Listen, William, I feel your pain. I'm with you all the way. I will happily stand on the barricades with you. You're a good man. Thank you very much indeed. Steve from Rossendale says, Mike, it's 204.9 on Sandbach services southbound, and they turned the pump off when it reached 132 quid. So now I'm not even allowed to fill my own tank. And here's an even better one. This is coming on the text, which is 87222. It says, diesel, £2.17 at AID fuel oils in Cannock in Staffordshire. 2.17. Blimey. Martin's in Colchester. Hello, Martin.
Hello, Mike.
How you doing?
I'm great, thank you. How are you? It's my
first time caller. Well, welcome to the show. Thank you for calling. What can I do for you?
Well, before I say anything, I just wanted to say I just think the whole Talk Radio TV is marvellous. I used to listen to the Jeremiah Moan show at 12 o'clock on Radio 2. Anyway, what it is, I bumped into Boris Johnson about 6 or 7 weeks ago up in North Wales, where I'm from. And he's a great guy to meet in person, but I think that one of the reasons why they're not doing enough about the fuel issue is because I think the government is rather complacent about the employment or unemployment situation. And so I thought I'd look at some data. So back in 1973, when we had the OPEC crisis, unemployment in this country was 2.5%. And basically what followed that was a recession. And by the time Mrs. Thatcher's early years of her 1981, unemployment was running at 11 or 12%. Now, any economist will tell you that there is a time lag between an event and all the causes from the event. So, for example, just after the OPEC crisis, inflation peaked at actually 22%, then fell to a median of about 13, 14%. And we can see we're in a high inflation situation. Now, I've run a lot of businesses. I have an online business now. I also had a restaurant business for 10 years, and I grew up in the hotel industry in North Wales.
Right.
And if it gets so expensive for people to get in their vehicles and go places, they will simply stop spending and stop putting money in the economy.
Yeah.
And I think this is the elephant in the room. And all of this, of course, demands some form of fiscal response. If we have high unemployment in this country, the fiscal response that we need will be much, much bigger than, for example, Rishi Sunak making some changes to VAT, or, you know, for example, some tax cuts now. In other words, I think I think we really are. I'm naturally a Conservative supporter, but we are on the precipice. I'm sorry to be a doom and gloom merchant, but we really are on the precipice.
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. Martin, I appreciate your call. I'm glad you made the call, because the first-time callers are very welcome on this show, because we have got loads of new callers and new viewers, new listeners, because we are, of course, Talk TV, coming to you live from the Talk Radio studios. We've got fantastic things to come this afternoon, this very day. Ian Collins from 1, Jeremy Kyle from 4. You've got the news desk with Tom Newton done at 7, of course, Piers Morgan at 8, the Talk at 9 o'clock. It's all going on. Daisy McAndrew, of course, and James Whale coming up, splitting that 10 o'clock slot as well. Keep it up. Let us know. £2.17 is the high price at the moment in Cannock in Staffordshire. £2.17. This is Talk TV.
on TV, on radio, and on your smartphone. This is Talk TV. Talk TV News at 12.
Good afternoon, I'm Emily Rose Adams. The average price of a full tank of petrol for a family car in the UK has hit £100 for the first time. The RAC Motoring Group has called it a truly dark day. Well, former Conservative leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith has told us the world's over-reliance on Russian oil and gas is partly to blame.
We and other countries over the last number of governments decided that it didn't matter and we could just buy energy from anywhere, and we stopped producing our own energy. We're sitting on North Sea oil and gas, and we also have shale gas reserves here in the UK. So it's time for us to start thinking seriously about even going for net zero. You're going to need gas well into past that. We've got to start producing our own.
The chief of Paris police has apologised for tear-gassing Liverpool fans at the Champions League final. Didier Lallement admitted it was a failure but said he had no other option. Thousands of fans with tickets were unable to get into the stadium for the match against Real Madrid. A government review has found the age at which people can legally buy tobacco products in England should rise every year. It's part of government plans to be smoke-free and eradicating smoking by 2030, which would mean less than 5% of the population being smokers. Boris Johnson will extend the right to buy to people who rent from housing associations as part of a bid to boost home ownership in Britain and move on from questions over his leadership. He'll also say that lower-paid workers will be able to use their housing benefits to obtain mortgages. The Shadow Housing Secretary, Lisa Nandy, has doubts over whether the plan will work.
If you're on universal credit, you're not allowed to have more than 16,000 in savings, and the reality is most people don't have any at all. Mortgage lenders will be saying to people, well, where's your deposit? I think the reality is that this will help absolutely nobody at all.
Government figures show over 70,000 people fleeing Ukraine have now arrived in the UK under visa schemes. Almost 10,000 Ukrainian children have now been offered a school place in England from close to 11,500 applications so far. The Education Secretary, Nadeem Zahawi, called the figures encouraging. A lake in Devon remains closed until further notice as police continue to search for two people who went missing after a boat capsized. Two other people were rescued safely from the water at Rodeford Lake yesterday afternoon, and another two were taken to hospital in Plymouth. One has since been discharged, but the other remains in a critical condition. And Prince William has been pictured selling the big issue in central London. The future king donned a red seller's vest and a hat in Westminster. Kensington Palace says it's connected to a project for his 40th birthday. And now it's time for today's weather.
Business sponsors Talk TV weather.
Hello, I'm Nazanin Gaffer. Wet and windy weather from the west over the next few days. We are seeing the remnants of Tropical Storm Alex heading towards northern parts of the UK through Friday and Saturday. It's going to bring very windy conditions there. And interestingly, over the next few days, we are also going to see high or very high pollen levels due to the fact that it's going to turn increasingly windy, but also temperatures are going to be rising, especially across southern areas. And we've seen quite a lot of rain recently. As a result, that means there's a lot of grass about, and lots of grass pollen levels are going to be high too, mainly across England and Wales. So for today, we are starting off mostly fine and dry, but out towards the southwest, it's already cloudy with some patchy outbreaks of rain. Cloudy across parts of the north as well, brighter further south. That band of rain will be moving its way eastwards through today, mainly reaching central and western parts of the UK, where it will be mostly cloudy with some patchy outbreaks of rain. But across eastern Scotland and eastern parts of England, it looks mostly fine and bright. Then for Friday and for Saturday, as I mentioned, we are going to see the remnants of Tropical Storm Alex approaching northern parts of the UK. It's going to bring very windy conditions across these areas, choppy waters, gales likely around parts of the coast, but calmer across parts of the south, mainly dry and bright.
Sunday Times Culture sponsors Talk TV weather.
On my fantasy talk show, it's still a fantasy, yeah? Who would be my three guests? Piers, undoubtedly. The Queen. Margaret Thatcher, nailed on.
Welcome back to the Independent Republican Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. It is the afternoon. We have sashayed through the morning. We've been talking about a great many things, including, of course, the ludicrous cost of fuel. We've actually got, at the moment, the highest price of all time, £2.17 AID fuel oils in Cannock in Staffordshire. That's been sent in to us by text on 87222. Obviously, some people are being told when they fill up their tanks that they can't fill up their tanks completely. So Steve from Rossendale has told us he got up to £132 trying to fill up his tank, 204.9 at Sandbach Services southbound, and in fact that was as much as he could put in. So it's absolutely incredible. Even website hosts, we're being told, have put up their prices. What overheads have they got to pay? Amazon, they're putting up their prices. Why? Because they've got to deliver stuff and they need fuel for their trucks. Everything is going up in price. The government is saying that they're going to address the problem soon, but nobody knows exactly how they're going to do that. We will take more of your calls. Do keep telling us what you're seeing, what you're hearing, and what you're doing out there. Cost of living now costing you over £100 to fill up your average family car. 0344 499 1000. Coming up in this hour, a few different things to do. We're going to be talking to Jess Plale, who's from something called All Systems Row. She's part of a team of women who are going to be rowing around Great Britain. A fascinating story. There's a few other crews doing the same thing. It's all about a GB Row challenge, so we'll be playing a bit of that, and we'll be talking to Jess a little bit later on as well. But right now, I've got to tell you, I'm delighted to say we're joined by Chris Jagger, musician, writer, author, I would say compassionist, I might say that as well. Chris, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome.
Yeah, Mike. Yeah, how are you doing?
Yeah, very well indeed. I mean, you've got a show coming up this Friday, which we can talk about in a little while. You're doing a sort of an unusual type of evening, aren't you? It's not just a show, it's not just a concert, it's a kind of, you're doing some readings from your book, you're going to be playing some music as well. How are you?
I'm good. I mean, I used to live on the ground floor, and now I'm living on the first floor, so everything is going up.
Is that because of the change in the water levels?
It's all right. It's my terrible joke. Right?
Well, listen, I mean, we used to say that about Downing Street. You know, when the water starts reaching your ankles, you need to move upstairs and get out of the way. But anyway,
well, there is that.
Anyway,
yeah.
Listen, your book talks about your upbringing, talks about your life, talks about, you know, how you got to sort of where you are. Because at the end of the day, I suppose you must get sick of being asked this question, but you are Mick Jagger's brother, and he's obviously, you know, closer to you than he would be to anybody else that I know. So what's it been like?
Well, I mean, you know, the normal question, Mike, is what's it like being Mick Jagger's brother? And the normal answer is, well, it's perfectly ordinary, because I only had one brother, and that's him, so that's all I'm used to. Yeah. I haven't really got a lot of comparisons to make. So I've always had, and then sometimes I say, well, he's lucky to have me as his brother.
Well, it's probably true, actually, because, I mean, you could go around that way, couldn't you? Because he could have had a really awful brother who was constantly in the news for doing terrible things, and that wouldn't have been good.
Yeah, I mean, you know what it's like. You know, we're in our 70s now, and when you get to this point, you know, you've got big families, and you realise that, you know, the value of the families, as long as you don't have, you know, big arguments and fall out with each other, because, you know, you're there to support each other.
Absolutely right. I must say, by the way, you both look pretty good for two gentlemen in your 70s.
Was I remember when petrol was 5 shillings a gallon.
I remember when my mother had an Austin Cambridge and it used to have a starting handle for when it didn't start properly.
That's right, they all did.
I mean, those were the days. We once went on we used to go driving across Europe, and we would go camping in Italy. And I remember once my dad unfortunately managed to leave the AA Atlas on the roof of the car when we drove off out of the house, and so we didn't know where we were going.
No, but coming back to your point, you know, I went over to Madrid the other day because the Stones started their tour.
Yeah.
You know, it's partly in a way of support, you know, show my little bit of support. I mean, you know, he doesn't need me there really, but I figure it's a nice thing for him to have, you know, and, you know, went over with my wife, Carrie Ann.
Yeah.
And then my son was actually singing in one of the opening acts, because he sings with his Spanish band, and he blagged his way onto the opening spot thing. So I came on and sang a number as well.
Oh,
so
nice.
3 Jaggers on the stage at might be a Guinness Book of Records there.
That is fantastic, because he has been doing a bit of a sort of Instagram tour of Europe, hasn't he? I saw him putting out an Instagram, he was drinking a stein of beer, at about 10:30 in the morning and speaking German. So, I mean, he's still got it, hasn't he?
Spricht nicht so gut Deutsch, ja?
Yeah, absolutely right. So tell us a bit about growing up with him, because, I mean, presumably at some point or other you had to work out that he was going to become some kind of massive star, and you were going to have to deal with that.
Well, not really. I mean, all that kind of happened when I was at school, so, you know, it was sort of... and then soon after that, I mean, I was around in the early days of the 60s, so that was very exciting when the band were put together and they started getting big, and that was really exciting. And then after that, they went off to America, and they were, like, touring America a lot, so I didn't really see them terribly much, and I was at school doing all my exams and stuff. And then, you know, in the 60s, there was a lot else happening. You know, we used to go up to London and see, you know, bands like The Who and Jimi Hendrix and Georgie Fame, and go to clubs, and, you know, it was a whole big scene happening. And so that was kind of an exciting time to be around. So I put a lot of that stuff in the book, but there's a lot of other stuff in the book, like travels across to Asia. I spent 1.5 years away traveling, and then came back, and then there's stuff about the theatre. And
yeah, you were in Hair, I think, weren't you?
Yes, I haven't got that much now, but I was in it once.
That wasn't the naked one, was it?
The naked one, that's the thing you remember, I see.
It is, yeah, well, that's the one I remember. I remember the posters.
It was a political point, my dear boy.
Yeah, but you weren't wearing any clothes, though.
All to make a political point.
Of course. And
nothing wrong with nudity when you're young and handsome.
That's very true. There's quite a lot wrong with it when you get a bit older, but that's another story. So when you were out in the East, as it were, India, Pakistan, Afghanistan and all that, did you become entranced by all that, a bit like a lot of rock stars did in those days, like the Beatles did?
Well, yeah, but I mean, it took me 6 months to get there because, we went overland. So, yeah, I mean, it was a great education, Mike. I mean, you know, you meet a lot of people, and, you know, you meet a huge amount of generosity. I mean, we travelled across Afghanistan. I was in the north. I mean, people were so kind. You know, they took you in. We weren't supposed to go to the north. It was a banned area even then. This was before the Russians arrived.
Right.
We had never had any problem. We were supposed to have a permit, but we didn't. And then some policeman met us outside a village, and we thought, oh, no, what's going to happen now? So he got in the car, and he said, drive, and he stopped. And he put his hand up to stop. And then he said, we take tea, and he paid for our tea.
Nice. It's lovely. I mean, travelling, that's one of the things that I really resented about the whole lockdown the last 2 years, was the imposition of no travelling. And it obviously didn't affect everybody, but it affected a lot of people. I love travelling, and travelling now has just become such a chore, hasn't it?
It's become rather tedious. I mean, yeah. I mean, like I say, we went overland, and then I spent time in India. Yeah, I mean, I did. I learned about India. I learned about Hinduism. I learned quite a lot about Buddhism. You know, it was quite, you know, and a lot of the things, of course, that we were looking at then, we were looking at yoga, we were sort of vegetarians.
Yeah.
All those things, I mean, that's all dead mainstream now. Everyone's sort of taking it on. Well, maybe not you, Mike, but...
Listen, I've had my own yoga mat for many years. I just don't know what to do with it.
You lie down on it, don't you?
Do you?
Start doing it, They start twitching a little bit.
Just the downward dog thing doesn't do it for me, really. I mean, I'm quite flexible, but you know, for my age, but I'm not really doing that. But let's talk a bit about your show, because
but we had, just to come back to that.
Yeah.
You know, my father was a PE lecturer,
right?
So we had quite a good upbringing. You know, Mick and I in all that sort of sports activity, keeping fit, and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So it stood us in good stead.
Well, I mean, Mick's incredibly fit, isn't he? I saw the Stones, I think it was around about 79 or 80 on the Tattoo You tour, the Start Me Up one. And he just...
Showing your age?
Yeah, well, I am. I'm older than I look, I tell you. But I've got some makeup on as well. He was incredible. I mean, he just literally ran on the spot for 2.5 hours, you know. And, I mean, a man... He probably still does that. And, I mean, there'd be people half his age who couldn't do that.
Well, anyway, yeah, I'm at the I'm at Isha Theatre tomorrow night. On Friday night. That's the show we're talking about.
Yeah.
Kid Jensen's put me on. He talked me into it.
Okay.
Who used to be a DJ, if you remember the old times.
I do. How is he doing? Because his health hasn't been great lately, has it? Is
he's doing all right. And then tonight, I'm at my old school, which is in South East London, Nelson College. That's more or less sold out. So
Okay.
I've been doing a few. I give a bit of a chat, and I'm going down there early to go spend an hour with all the music students, with Charlie Hart, my partner in crime, and we're giving a bit of a workshop with them. That's always nice. I like, getting to know young people and talking to them and answering questions. So, yeah, it's a bit different than some of the shows because I'm doing a bit of the reading from the book and then we play some songs. Yeah. And people seem to really like that. It's kind of quite informal. I think people really like a live show now as well, because they've had so much of that kind of YouTube mentality where everything's on a screen. It's really not. I think people really enjoy seeing somebody live, talking to them in person, Well, we're on a screen now, Mike.
Well, we are, but that's because we're on TV. But it doesn't mean that people don't want to come and watch you. That's my point, you see. This is my subtle way.
I like things happening here and now as we speak. That's why, I tune in to watch a football match or a cricket match. I like it happening then and there.
Yes.
And the excitement of the immediate action, which you get, obviously, at a show. Things go wrong. When things go wrong, you say, it's just to prove it's live.
Yes, we do that all the time here, but we don't get as much wrong as we used to, has to be said. Mick's a big cricket fan. I mean, how does he survive touring without going to see the cricket?
Well, I don't know. Maybe we can go and see some later on. No, we won't be able to see any. I remember dear old Charlie Watts, who was the drummer.
Yeah.
And the Stones, they booked a tour somewhere some years ago, and he said, do you realise I'll be missing all the cricket that's happening in the summer? He was really disappointed about it.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, listen,
we're all big cricket fans. Yeah.
Great stuff. Listen, Chris, good luck with the show tonight and tomorrow night. It's at the Esher Theatre. You can get the book as well. It's called Talking to Myself. Chris Jagger, his official website you can find as well. It's all over the place. It's all happening. It's all happening right here as well at the Independent Republican Mike Graham right now on Talk TV. Welcome back to the Independent Republican Mike Graham, right here on Talk TV. Fascinating. The show has been really interesting today. We're still looking for the highest priced fuel. Right now, it's running in Cannock in Staffordshire at a place called AID Fuel Oils, £2.17. Unbelievable for diesel. Incredible, isn't it? So do let us know if you've seen anything bigger than that. You can, of course, tweet us at TalkTV, at IROMG, which is my Twitter, and you can send us a text as well to 87222. Right now, though, having just spoken to Chris Jagger, brother of Mick Jagger, we're going to talk to Jess Playle from an organisation called All Systems Row, because you'll never guess what she is about to do. Starting, I think, tomorrow, the GB Road Challenge 2022, she is going to be basically rowing with a team of other women around the Isles of Great Britain. It's absolutely extraordinary what is going on, and I'm very, very delighted to welcome Jess to the show. Jess, a very good afternoon to you.
Hello there, and thanks for having me on.
Not at all. 2,000 nautical miles, a brand new world record, possibly. This has been going on since about 2005. I mean, you're going to start off at Tower Bridge, you're going to head out towards the Thames estuary, and you're going to literally row around Britain. I mean, it sounds mad, I have to say. Tell me why you're doing it.
You're not the first person to say that, but I'm in a wonderful team. I've got.
Oops. Well, we'll see if we can come back to you. We've got a little bit of a Wi-Fi problem there, because, of course, what we're going to be hearing about is how they're going to go into the North Sea. They'll go south and take a clockwise direction around Great Britain before returning to the Thames and Tower Bridge to finish the race. Now, before all of this goes on, because you can imagine how hard this must be to do, they've all had to do all sorts of training courses, because they're all ordinary women who have ordinary jobs, who don't do this sort of thing for a living. I think we got Jess back. Have we got you back, Jess?
I'm back, yeah.
Good. Yeah, sorry about that. You just froze, just as you were explaining why you decided to do it.
Well, we're all, as I said, we're all very adventurous women. We absolutely love a challenge. We are looking forward to doing this, partly also to raise awareness of climate change and for the environmental aspects as well. And
you're not the only team out there, are you? There's going to be more than yourselves.
Exactly. There's 3 teams out there. We're hoping for a record of 35 days to circumnavigate the whole of Great Britain. So it's going to be quite a tough challenge. We'll be rowing 2 hours on, 2 hours off, day and night.
Right.
In teams of either 2 or 3. And all our navigation equipment and our desalinator for our water is all powered by solar energy. So we're hoping for some good weather as well.
Yeah. Well, it's not that sunny today, but, I mean, hopefully it won't be terrible when you set off tomorrow. So as far as the boat itself, what does it actually look like? Is it one of those, has it got sort of a covered part of it? Are you sitting inside? How does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's 10 metres long. It's got a very small cabin at either end. One end is for our navigation, and the other end is a bit bigger and a bit more comfortable. But I wouldn't say luxury is anywhere near.
No, I don't think so. And I mean, what about the rowing? You're going to row, as you say, sort of 2 hours on, 2 hours off. So how many people are rowing at any one time?
Well, because there's 5 of us, we'll have either 2 or 3 people rowing on a rota basis. So hopefully, there's the rowing positions. We've got 3 rowing seats in total, so we've got enough to rotate through quite a lot.
Right,
so.
OK. And when you head out towards the sort of English Channel, North Sea, and then you're going to go clockwise around, I suppose, the south-east coast first, I mean, it's quite busy there. You know, there's quite a lot of people in the English Channel, quite a lot of boats. It's the busiest shipping lane in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, yeah, no, you're absolutely right. So I'm doing navigation, and obviously going past Dover and the Bristol channels where all the big ships are, it's going to be quite nerve-wracking. But we've done all the navigation courses and our radio courses to enable us to communicate properly. We just, hope that we get around safely, which I'm sure we will.
Yeah, and so you're looking to beat 35 days. So you're looking at probably the best part of sometime middle towards the end of July. You're going to come back.
Yeah, that's right. So we actually set off on Sunday this weekend.
Right.
And we're hoping to be back within 35 days if possible to set the new world record.
OK. And I presume you've all got families that you're leaving behind, and, what are they going to be doing?
Well, Andrea, one of our members, is a mum of 4, so I think kids are going to miss her a lot. I know she'll miss them, but Yeah, we've all got families. I think probably some of them will be glad for having a little break from us.
Yeah, well, I mean, you must have been...
from the last year.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, I mean, you've been training for this for a long time, so presumably they're used to you not being particularly necessarily around. But, I mean, it's a fantastic thing you're doing. And what about... Are you going to stop anywhere, or are you just going to keep going all the time?
So it's unsupported and it's non-stop. So the idea is that we leave with all the provisions that we have and that we'll need for the whole entire time.
Right.
And, no, we don't stop. If we need to anchor, we can anchor, but we can't use any man-made structures such as mooring buoys or car.
Well, you can't really anchor much out in the wilds, though, can you? I mean, you have to come in quite close to shore to anchor, unless you've got an anchor that's about, 1,000 feet deep or something.
Well, we actually have a power anchor, which is basically a big parachute you drop off the end of the boat, and it holds you in the water.
Oh, right. So... Oh, you see. There you go. See, I'm old-fashioned. I thought it was always made of metal. You had to drop it in with a chain and all that.
We've got both.
So what sort of provisions can you take? Because presumably you don't want to weigh the boat down with food.
Yeah, I mean, we packed it yesterday and we have got a lot of food on board. We've got essentially spaceman food, dehydrated rations of all sorts, and some are more tasty than others, but I'm sure we'll just have to suck it up and go for it.
Have you got a fishing rod, just in case you need to go sort of native and get some fish out the sea?
I have actually brought a fishing rod with us. Just
there you go.
Yeah, genuinely. And we've got lots of snacks as well.
Okay.
So,
And what about the other obvious question would be what do you do if you have to go to the toilet?
We have a very fancy bucket with a fashion toilet seat.
Okay, well, very nice. I mean, it's quite a remarkable thing. I'm told there are some whirlpools that you might have to navigate around up in Scotland as well, off the west coast of Scotland.
Yeah, you're right. There's one on the west coast of Scotland which we can definitely bypass, and then up around Cape Wrath and Portland Bill, which is near John O'Groats. The two headlands in top of Scotland, they're quite dodgy areas in terms of navigation and tidal streams. So we've just got to really time them properly, otherwise we'll be going backwards instead of forwards.
Yeah, right. Because presumably, I mean, the tides are going to be a big thing as well, aren't they? I mean, how do you? I mean, can you chart the tides? Can you know which way the tides are going, or do you just have to sort of?
Yeah, absolutely. We've done a lot of training to learn about the tides, and some tides we'll be able to row against. So obviously the tides change every 6 hours, so 6 hours of tide will be helpful for us, and then 6 hours of tides they'll be going against us. But some will be strong enough that we can we'll have to anchor or at least have a rest, and then others will be not so strong and we can actually row against them.
Right. And you can actually cook on board, right? You've got stoves.
We have a very fancy jet boil, which is essentially a gas fired stove which heats which heats water, and then we use the water to rehydrate our ration packs.
Right. So it's not so you've got to take some gas on board as well, then, presumably.
Yeah. So we've got bottles of gas, and I mean the boat is chock-a-block now. It's full of food, it's full of kit, it's full of equipment, and it's just a case of organising ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, I live just not far down the river from Tower Bridge, and I see the tide actually just in the river, and it's pretty intense. And I've seen like narrow boats come out of the Limehouse Basin and bob about on the river there, and it looks quite treacherous just there.
Yeah, I mean, looking at we did a Thames recce a couple of weeks ago, and the tide's really strong, and it can get very turbulent as well.
Oh, yeah, it really is. Well, listen, best of luck. This is the first time an all-women crew has gone out there. Are you up against... are there two other boats, male-dominated boats out there?
So it's actually the second time a female crew have done it, but the first time a female crew of 5. So, and then the other 2 boats are mixed crews.
OK. Well, you're going to be striking a blow for feminism anyway. That's the main thing.
Absolutely. We're going to give them a run for their money.
Well, good luck, and say hello to Andrea for me. Thank you very much indeed. That's Jess Plale, All Systems Row skipper. They're going to take off Sunday from Tower Bridge. Imagine rowing around Britain. Probably quicker than trying to get a train, mind you, given that they're all on strike. Probably easier than getting on a plane as well, because they don't go anywhere either. This is Talk TV. What was my biggest career moment? After spending about 25 years at Fleet Street, there's loads of stories I could tell you. But actually, I think I did an overnight show for Talk Radio in the early days, the night of the Brexit referendum. And that was actually quite a milestone, because, of course, we started off thinking that Remain had won. And at 2:30, 2:45, after Nigel Farage had already said he'd lost, it turned out he hadn't lost. And it turned out we were leaving the European Union. So that was quite a shocker.
This is Talk TV News.
Good afternoon, I'm Emily Rose Adams. The average price of a full tank of petrol for a family car in the UK has hit £100 for the first time. The RAC Motoring Group has called it a truly dark day. Well, former Conservative leader Sir Ian Duncan-Smith has told us the world's over-reliance on Russian oil and gas is partly to blame.
We and other countries over the last number of governments decided that it didn't matter and we could just buy energy from anywhere, and we stopped producing our own energy. We're sitting on North Sea oil and gas, and we also have shale gas reserves here in the UK. So it's time for us to start thinking seriously about even going for net zero. You're going to need gas well into past that. We've got to start producing our own.
The chief of Paris police has apologised for tear-gassing Liverpool fans at the Champions League final. Didier Lallement admitted it was a failure but said he had no other option. Thousands of fans with tickets were unable to get into the stadium for the match against Real Madrid. A government review has found the age at which people can legally buy tobacco products in England should rise every year. It's part of government plans to be smoke-free in eradicating smoking by 2030, which would mean less than 5% of the population being smokers. Government figures show over 70,000 people fleeing Ukraine have now arrived in the UK under visa schemes. Almost 10,000 Ukrainian children have now been offered a school place in England from close to 11,500 applications so far. And the Education Secretary Nadeem Zahawi's called the figures encouraging. And Prince William has been pictured selling the big issue in central London. The future king donned a red seller's vest and a hat in Westminster. Kensington Palace says it's connected to a project for his 40th birthday. That's all for now. We'll have more in half an hour.
Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham right here on Talk TV. We're still searching for a higher price than £2.17 for a litre of diesel. That's at the AID Fuel Oils in Cannock, Staffordshire. I don't imagine we'll find higher than £2.17. That really is quite remarkable, quite ridiculous. Let's go to the phones, though. Tracy is in Burton-on-Trent. Hello, Tracy.
Hello, Mike. I spoke to you last week, and we had a little bit of an argument about whether we should get rid of Boris or not.
Yes.
And you said, no, keep him.
Yes.
You said, no, keep him.
And he's still there.
And he's still there, bless him. Basically, what came along, he says, it was a bit of a, I told you so. You know, he's survived this vote, fair enough. And what's he come out of the gate with? You know, the first big thing to say, this is the right direction and away we go. What's he come out with? Helping people on housing benefit get a mortgage.
Yeah.
This bloke, I mean, to be honest, Mike, Michael Gove this morning, you know, on Julia, I understand people. These people do not even pay for their own wallpaper.
I know.
I mean, how on earth can they understand? I actually think, Mike, we should start a clap for tax cuts on a Thursday night at 8 o'clock.
Well, this is the trouble with what is going on out there. I wonder who in Downing Street is advising these guys, right? Who on earth thinks that there are two things wrong with this plan, right? One, you're reducing the housing stock for people who can't afford to buy houses in the first place by letting people buy houses which are for people who can't afford to buy them. And you're then giving them money from us, from many ordinary people who still can't afford to buy houses but who don't get housing benefit.
I mean, the thing, Mike, is, you know, I've played by the rules all my life, went to work, paid my taxes, you know, afforded to buy my own house, retired a few years ago. I've got a small private pension, which has taken, you know, a 10% cut since Boris got in.
I was going to say, it's probably smaller now than it was.
It's a lot smaller than it once was. Luckily, I locked it in so it couldn't lose more than 10%. But anyway, I played by the rules all my life, you know, and you just think, I actually think, with this latest thing that's come out from Boris, I think what they do is they go, they come out with something, they've not thought about it, but they've said it, so that's all we need. Do you know what I mean?
That's definitely what they're doing with everything at the moment. They're saying something and nothing's changing.
Savage Javid, you know, we want to cut out diversity managers in the NHS. That's not going to happen.
No.
Priti Patel, we're going to sort out immigration. It's not going to happen. Do you know what I mean? And I think the problem with you, Mike, is you're too optimistic.
How can you be critical of somebody who's too optimistic?
Hope clouds reason, Mike.
Yeah, but I still have plenty of reason, but I don't think there's anything wrong with hope either.
Well, to be honest, honest, I actually think after Boris's latest this morning, I actually think we're going back to the 1970s, which I mean,
I have been saying that for a while. I quite enjoyed the 1970s, though, because I was, you know, young, carefree. I mean, I didn't have anything to lose, so it didn't really matter.
No, but I think we're going back there. I think we're going to become the sick man of Europe.
I saw Led Zeppelin in the 70s. I saw Deep Purple. I saw the Rolling Stones. I think I saw The Who a few times. It was great.
I know. Yeah, and what do we have now? Ed Sheeran.
And now you got Ed Sheeran for 200 quid a night.
Yeah, and to be honest, Mike, I think that's where we're going. I think we're going to spend 10 years absolutely nowhere. I think, you know... Yeah, Boris Johnson's attack for the next election is, well, you know, you want me because Labour's going to be worse.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I just want somebody better. I mean, Steve Baker, doesn't want the job. He's the perfect person because he doesn't want to be Prime Minister.
No, he doesn't, and I don't blame him either. I mean, who would want to be Prime Minister? I mean, that's immediately a disqualification, you know, because you have to be a bit of a psychopath to want to do that job.
I think you have to be a sociopath, to be honest.
Yes.
I think they're sociopaths, but yeah, I mean, bless you for being optimistic, Mike, and I love you for
Somebody's
it.
got to be.
I love you for it, but you know, honestly, I think we're doomed.
Doomed.
To be honest, you know, I'm on a fix. I mean, I retired, and obviously I'm pulling down off my private pension. And, you know, I'm just really, really worried about the future.
No, listen, I share your thoughts, Tracy, and I don't disagree with anything you've said, actually. I just have to be optimistic. This is always the way I've been. I mean, I've been in some pretty bad places in my life, in some pretty terrible situations. I've always got out of them. So, I mean, I'm always optimistic, sort of because the alternative is too depressing.
Yeah,
you know?
It is. I mean, you know... How my parents coped in the 70s, obviously when I was a teenager, I actually don't know. They must have been worried to death.
Well, you know, I don't think they worried as much in those days, you know. I mean, I grew up in a flat, right? It was a very nice part of London, but it wasn't an expensive place to live. It wasn't a lot, because in those days it wasn't ridiculous. I mean, the part of London was Hampstead, and in those days people could afford to live there. Now I can't afford to live there, and I make a lot more money than my parents ever did. You know, I couldn't rent a flat there now. It's outrageous. You know, people like Kevin O'Sullivan can afford to live there, but he's, you know, much wealthier than me. But the point is that because we didn't have that much, and the cost of living wasn't terrible. You know, you could buy things. You could afford to go to a concert. You could afford to go to the cinema. You know, you could afford to put petrol in your car. Now it's worse because actually all of those things are almost out of reach for a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think about where I'm going now with petrol.
Yeah.
You know, because I just think, well, actually, if I do that journey, that's going to cost me a tenner.
Well, I've just had a note from somebody called Flyer who says they've just found the dearest petrol in Sloane Avenue in Chelsea, £2.20 a litre.
I mean, I walk past the petrol station every day when I'm walking my dogs in the morning, and every day it goes up 1 or 2p.
Yeah.
I mean, yesterday this morning it was 181.9. That's for petrol.
Yeah.
Diesel obviously is more expensive. And yesterday it was 179. It was 179.9. So it's gone up 2p overnight.
Yeah.
And that's happened every day this week that I've walked past.
And I don't understand how that's going on without somebody stopping it, because it doesn't seem to be economically defensible, for heaven's sake. Listen, Tracy, I've got to run. Thanks for calling, and you know we'll always have an agreement about all sorts of things, and I'm sure that you'll call again. And I'm not disagreeing with you at all. I just feel like I can't say we're doomed, because you know it's unthinkable. Keith is in Newcastle. Hi, Keith.
Hi there, Mike. How are you doing?
Good, sir. What can I do for you?
Well, the top of your show, you're just on about the NHS, and touch wood, I've been healthy pretty much most of my life, but had operation 6 years ago, exact same faults coming back, hand operation, so nothing major, nothing life-threatening.
Right.
Need to go to my GPs to get a referral to see the hand surgeon again. Can I get in my GP?
Of course you can.
Pain got like horrific. Rang my GP saying, look, there's any chance of getting in the seat. Look, let's go to E&E. Turns up at E&E. Said 2 to 3 hours wait, but it could be 7 to 10 hours. I'm sure you quoted long at the start.
Yeah, it was 7 minimum, possibly 13.
Well, mine was 2 to 3, but they said you never know what's going to come in. So on this afternoon, I set aside a bit of time by myself, went in, and a porter's trolley came along, pushed by a police officer, brought this guy in, checked in right in front of my eyes, hilarious. says, what's his name? This is the girl on reception. Police officer answers for the guy, says he identifies as Keanu Reeves. I thought, oh, here we go. He's going to be at the front of the queue. So that's me pushed back, you know. Anyway, I knew what my fault was on my hand, so I really just need to get in for the person behind the door to say, you need this done. But something I already know because the fault is a reoccurrence. It's just exact thing I know.
So you know what it is, yeah?
Yeah. So anyway, I'm sitting waiting again for my turn, though, because it was particularly severe, this pain on that day. So I was at E&E. Next thing I know, 2 more police officers coming up to the E&E reception, which I'm sitting next to.
Yeah.
And the girl says, how can I help you? Oh, we need to get to the 7th floor. Well, the elevator only goes to the 3rd floor, so the 7th must be specific, and there's one elevator goes there. Receptionist didn't have a clue where it was. Asked, why do you need to be on the 7th floor? Oh, well, there's a man on the roof threatening to jump. I thought, God, if he jumps, that's me further back down the queue.
Oh my God! Listen, what a great Keith. Listen, I've got to run because we've got to go for a break. But that's extraordinary. Identifying as Keanu Reeves, what, in The Matrix or in Speed? Which one? This is Talk TV. Welcome back to the Independent Republic of Mike Graham. That was quick. It's Thursday, so Helena Nicklin's here. Hello.
Lovely to see you, Mike.
Lovely to see you. And you were away last week, so we were on Zoom.
We were Zoomifying, yes.
In the old-fashioned way. Yeah. We've got plenty to celebrate, I suppose, this week. Boris Johnson's still the Prime Minister. Some people might not think that's cause to celebrate, but I do, because I was right again. I said he wasn't going to go. Also, of course, petrol has now reached a fine old price of £2.20. Also not really worth celebrating. What else can we talk about?
International Rosé Day.
Yes.
Saturday, I mean, and Gin Day too.
Is it Gin Day as well?
If you need some distraction from
Do you know,
the
I
news.
finally, because I've set myself some goals now. Now, these are not the sort of goals that other people would set. I've set myself some goals to drink some of the alcohol that I've got at home. So I managed to finish the Roku gin yesterday.
Oh, well
There
done.
was just a little bit left, and I had some tonic, and I just had a couple of glasses with some ice. It was lovely.
Oh, nice.
And I've still got that lovely bottle that you gave me that was from Boris.
Oh,
you know,
yes,
the
from the
personalised
Whiskey
one.
Exchange, your personalised
And
one.
I've
yeah.
still got a little bit of the Buckingham Palace gin left.
Oh, goody.
Which I'm moving on to next.
Yes.
And I've got an extraordinary amount of tequila.
Oh, yeah.
But I might have to have a party to get rid of that.
Well, do you know, I set up a free drink stall at our Jubilee Street party, and I've still got far too much booze in there.
Do you know, that's what I should have done, because there was we had a party in our little square in East London. It was lovely, but it was mostly just wine. And luckily I drove up from Sussex, and I had three-quarters of a bottle of rosé in the car. I explained to people not to drink while I was driving, but because I hadn't finished it, and I thought rather than leave it for a week, I'll, you know, bring it to London and drink it here. So I drank that, gave that to some people. I met some very nice people that I didn't know existed, who, despite the fact that I've lived there for 15 years or something, I've never met. It was quite weird, wasn't it?
It's always
But it
weird.
was a great weekend. It was very British, I thought.
You seemed very jolly last Thursday.
I really was. I was, you know, more than I thought I would be. I was really taken up with the whole idea of the thing.
Yeah, and the weather was right for it.
Weather was nice. It was all good. So today
Yeah.
we're moving slightly southeast, I suppose, from here, aren't we?
Well, we are I thought lots of people's flights were cancelled, you know, so I thought let's bring a taste of the south of France.
I don't know why people complain. You know, I'm stuck in France.
I know.
Great.
Well, if you're stuck in the airport, it's not so great.
Not so great. But, I mean, I wouldn't be stuck in the airport. I once was in New York and they cancelled a flight because it was snowing. And I went back into the city. And unbeknownst to me, all the other people who had been on the flight were put up in a hotel at Newark Airport, which I somehow had missed. And so I was back in Manhattan having a great old time, went back to get the flight the next morning, and it had already gone. Because I never got the call, because they didn't know that anybody hadn't gone to the hotel with everybody else.
Oh, joy.
So then I had to sit all day in the airport to wait for the next flight.
Yeah.
But
Not so good.
Not so good.
Not so good.
And so what have we here?
Well, I thought we'd do, quite simply, some gorgeous wines from the Languedoc in south of France.
Why not, indeed? I like the look of these, because one of them is rosé, one of them is white, and one of them is sort of orange.
One of them is orange, yeah.
I think you brought me orange before.
Yes, we've done it a while ago, a Corny and Barrow one, yes. But this is a southern French one, and the first one
Now, people have already remarked about this, Paul Mass.
Yes.
So is that quite a famous mark, then?
Yes, both are two winemakers we're looking at today. Paul Mass, who's now run by Jean-Claude Mass, who's an absolute legend, and Gérard Bertrand, who is also a massive legend in south of France. He was an ex-professional rugby player, so he's quite famous as well.
Oh, really?
You'd probably recognise him.
Actually, I think I would. I think I didn't recognise that name. So this is the first one. It's quite light-looking.
It's very light-looking. So this is from Paul Mass, the domain Paul Mass.
Yeah.
So down in the south...
Languedoc.
Languedoc, and the grape is Clairette, which no one's really ever heard of. It's, well, unless you're kind of a wine geek, it's one of those local varieties from the south of France. And Jean-Claude is really bringing these heritage grape varieties back to life.
Nice.
That's why this wine is called the
It's a lovely bottle
Clairette.
as well. It's slightly kind of, devilled, would you call that?
Yes,
Beveled?
Something like that. It's a very distinctive bottle, so it's kind of fluty, a bit like a Picpoul, but with a more distinctive...
Do you know, I had a Picpoul the other day, and you know how sometimes you think, I really used to like this wine, but I've kind of gone off it. I think I maybe have drunk too much of it or something.
It happens, and you know, maybe when something gets
too
famous,
sharp or something.
Maybe they start making too much of it, and the quality goes down.
I really liked it when it first came out a few years ago.
Yeah, well, Picpoul's called Picpoul because that means lip stinger in French.
Right.
Well, in Old French, I think it is. Because it's really high in acid and really kind of...
Yes, it is a bit like that. This is lovely.
Yeah, so Clairette...
I much prefer this, actually.
Yeah, well, you never used to see this as a single grape variety, but, Paul Mass are doing this. It's really soft, isn't it? It's kind of creamy, kind of orchard fruit, pear...
Easy to drink as well.
It's a really, really
lovely. You know, I
lovely
often
wine.
say to you, the first wine sometimes is a bit... You kind of go, ooh.
Yes.
But that's beautiful.
It's really well balanced.
Is it expensive?
It's not too acidic. It's £9 from Sainsbury's. And, it's... you should keep a lookout at Paul Mass at the moment, because they really are doing some interesting things with the old-fashioned grapes.
Yeah.
And often they provide excellent value. We talked about those in Italy before, haven't we?
Yeah.
Looking at the local grape varieties, because they're much more interesting.
Actually, I must talk to you about Italy, because I'm going there.
Ooh.
And so I need some advice from you.
I can do that.
What to drink while I'm there. Next one, Gerard Bertrand. Is that the same guy?
Yes. Well, Gerard Bertrand, no, not the same as Paul Mass. No, so this is another wine producer, massive in the south of France.
But there was another name you mentioned, though.
Yes, so there is Paul Mass, which is the domain, and Jean-Claude Mass is a descendant of Paul Mass, so he runs the show now there.
Okay.
One of his neighbours is Gerard Bertrand.
Okay.
And, like,
because I thought I'd heard the name already, but you've said it once.
I have said it, that's why. Yeah, but between them, they have so many different wines and all these amazing styles from all the different appellations. This is a rosé. It's not Provence, it's Languedoc.
Quite tart, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't it? Well, correct me if I'm wrong.
It is. It's got a good acidity. It's fresh. But I like the rosés.
Lovely bottle as well.
Provence.
All these bottles are really pretty. This is a Côte de Rose.
Côte de Rose, yes. That's
Sud de France. I've never seen that.
de France.
I mean, that even works if French is really rubbish, isn't it?
Yes.
Sud de France. Because you say du Sud.
Well, not Sud de France.
No.
No, it's a gorgeous bottle. It's shaped like a rose underneath, actually. Don't turn it upside down while it's open. But yeah, it's got one of those glass stoppers as well, which is very sustainable.
That's lovely.
And people keep that bottle to drink water out of, etc. afterwards as well.
Because it's that sort of shape, isn't it? Sort of carafe shape.
Yeah,
almost.
it is. And this is a really, really pale, very dry, very crisp rosé, but it has got a little bit more fruit than the Provençal style, and you will find that down in the Languedoc, because it tends to be a little bit more sort of riper fruit, and it's less kind of saline.
Well, I think they're both delicious.
It's a very elegant pink, this, isn't it?
You've definitely struck something here.
Now, I love Southern French rosés.
By the way, can I just congratulate you on one of your Instagram posts? That one where you've got the bloke's voice is hilarious. It's a video. I don't know how you did it. There's a video where Helena is basically... did you have the dog with you?
I had the dog, yes, I'm dubbing.
And then she's dubbing it, right? And it's this male voice. It's brilliant. I need to know how to do that.
Annoyingly, they always do the best, you know.
Of course they do.
Other than, like, the sponsored posts I do. Yeah, it's the ones where I'm...
Well, it's like me. I mean, what did I get 15 million hits for on Twitter? It was the concrete clip. Nothing to do with, like, incredibly good analysis of politics.
It's always the way, isn't it? I thought you were going to say the big award of the Three Drinkers won last night, but no, it was the
Well, I haven't seen that.
No, OK, fair enough.
So tell us about the big award.
Oh, we won a big industry award in the drinks trade for contribution to wine and spirits tourism.
Splendid.
So, yeah, I'm award-winning.
Funnily enough, your name came up, actually, on Sunday at the Do, because I met a guy who imports vodka from Iceland. And I asked him if he knew, and he said he didn't.
Oh, damn
I said, well, you should.
Quite right.
Because then he said, well, any chance we could get our drinks on your show? I said, well, you'll have to talk to Helena.
Yeah, you have to schmooze me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see. So next, now, you might as well explain what orange wine is first.
Yes, I will. Just before I do, that one was from Majestic. It's $10.99 as part of a Mix 6. So when you're going in there loading up for your barbecue, it's just, grab a load of those.
It's really good.
So orange wine is basically white wine made like a red wine.
Right.
Because the colour comes from red wine when you macerate the skins with the juice.
Right.
And so what they do here, instead of just squeezing the grape and then separating the skins from the juice...
And so you can see the difference. I'm just holding it up and you can see it. That's the orange and that's the rosé. So you can see it is orange.
It is orange, so that colour is coming from the white grape skins.
Okay.
And what that gives is an extra complexity and a real texture as well. There's a slight bitterness on the finish of this one as well, which is really Moorish.
And it looks I mean, it's a bit like... I think it was Heston Blumenthal used to make those dishes that looked like something else, and then you would taste them and go,
oh, yes, he does.
And this looks kind of like sherry to me, so I expect it to be really, heavy and full, but it's not.
It's not, is it? It's really...
It's kind of a cool thing to taste.
It is. It's such an unusual style of wine, but it's delicious. It's really kind of candied pineapple.
Yes.
Very, very creamy almost as well. And then
really
it's got that little bitter kick on the finish. This with hard cheese, like a Comté, would be amazing.
And this is also Gerard Bertrand.
It is, yeah. It's
so is orange wine specific to that region then?
Not at all. And this is the first orange wine he's ever tried to do. And I think he's done a really good job, because they can get a bit nutty, a bit funky. This is really fresh. It's lots of kind of tropical fruit in there, but it's dry at the same time. And it's a brilliant food wine, I think.
I like it a lot. So, I mean, is there much orange wine to sort of discover if you were looking around the world?
More and more, and they're all a bit hit and miss, but actually when they're made well, in this with modern techniques, they are absolutely delicious, really textural.
This is
really
going to be a tough choice as to which one I like best, so I'm going to go back to the beginning.
Yes. One must taste through them all again. Yes,
well, it's always interesting to do it sort of, you know...
Yeah, start light and go heavier. That's why we've gone white, pink, orange.
I'm a big rosé fan. I think I might have to go with the rosé.
But
I love them all. They're all really good.
I think they're really interesting and good summery wines as well, and easy to find.
And they're all without a screw top, aren't they?
They are. You can still bring it back. I don't understand why you can't stick the cork back in.
Well, you could.
Yeah.
If we haven't thrown them away.
No, I've kept them for you.
Have you?
Oh, yes.
Oh, OK, well, maybe I'll take them home then. I can't be drinking them all today.
No. This last one's from Majestic, by the way.
Is it? OK.
It's a touch more expensive, $14.99, I think, mixed fixed price, but it's a real...
And is that because it's orange?
Point.
Because it's more... Is it more expensive as a process?
Because it's harder to make. There's 7 grape varieties in this as well, and just... Yeah, it's more premium wine.
It's a great selection. I mean, you can do a lot worse than just buying these 3.
Yes.
For the sort of afternoon in the garden.
Exactly, I think so. But these 2 producers...
Obviously, if you had a lot of people coming.
Yeah.
Right.
But I think these 2 names particularly, they make wines at every kind of quality level and price level, and they make some really fantastic, accessible, well-priced stuff too.
And we should give you a little plug for your 3 drinkers. How's that all going?
Thank you very much. Well, amazing.
Yeah.
The 3 drinkers in Ireland, thanks. On Amazon. 3 drinkers in Ireland
on Amazon. Well worth checking it out. And also the 3 drinkers website, perhaps, have you got?
Yes, it's a magazine. In fact, all the details for the wines are always on the3drinkers.com every week. Yeah, and the podcast, Bring a Bottle, which one day you will come and
One day I will. I was meant to do it this week and something went wrong, so I didn't. But...